What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 1FG, Chapter 1, The Birth of the Viceroy. Advertise here. The first half of the Grand Line, Paradise. The grounds of Shichibukai Gecko Moria, Thriller Barque. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be One Piece. A somewhat chaotic thought reverberated in his mind. The consciousness that had been completely silent due to the high-intensity battle became active again because of a mysterious special force. Accompanied by the awakening of self-awareness, a voice began to echo in his mind. It is detected that the host state is extremely poor, and the evolution point is drawn to start evolution. Reparation for injuries. The comprehensive evolution of physical fitness begins, and the estimated time is 10 days. Conqueror's Haki evolution begins, evolution completes. Devil Fruit evolution begins, ability evolution development, estimated time, 10 days. Amidst this sound, waves of energy gushed out from the body, quickly repairing the injuries on the body. Coupled with a mysterious force, most of the injuries and fatigue in the body were ejected. The body that was seriously injured due to the battle was actually recovering at an extremely terrifying speed. Luffy has regained part of his consciousness at this moment, but he has not fully recovered and cannot really control his body. Also in this completely dark world, he heard a familiar voice. Exchange my life for Luffy's life. Although my head is not particularly famous now, but it is the head that will become the world's #1 swordsman. I think there should be no shortage. ... This is Zoro's voice. Why are you so humble? Thought Luffy. Even in the face of Hawkeye, the world's #1 swordsman, Zoro never lowered his head. Why now? Isn't Gecko Moria already solved? Have you met a new enemy again? Wake up, my body. Yet there was still darkness ahead. If you can't even protect your own captain, what ambition is there? Luffy, it's the man who is going to be the One Piece. Feel hell, roar Noah. The gentle voice sounded, but it contained a kind of regret. As if regretting the person in front of him, life is about to wither. A group of small blood-colored orbs popped out, slowly floated in front of Zoro, and then melted into his chest. Zoro's expression froze in an instant. Then in the next second, it completely turned into pain. With his will that is harder than steel, even if his bones are broken, the terrible will that has never screamed out, but at this moment he screamed out in pain. Such is the pain and fatigue that Luffy brings. Compared with the physique of the rubber man, the pain of Zoro, who is an ordinary person, may be doubled. Is this what Luffy suffers from? Only at this moment can Zoro better understand that the kind of injuries and pain Luffy endured after every battle, just a little bit, is already unimaginable for ordinary people. How do you want to continue? Bear said. Those who have not seen hell dare to go to hell. But facing hell, and going to hell, the courage required is more than 10 times that of the former. Who? Zoro gasped heavily, then said in a low voice. I'm going to change places. A moment later, he was faced with a huge ball of blood-red flesh condensed from fatigue and pain. Zoro didn't say anything, his eyes were terrifyingly calm, the eyes of a man who was determined to die. The next moment, Zoro pressed his hands directly into the huge blood-red flesh ball without any hesitation. An even bigger pain than before flooded the whole body in an instant. Uncontrollable screams resounded throughout the Thriller Barque. However, in the entire Thriller Barque, everyone was unconscious, and no one could hear Zoro's screams. Except for one person. Is that Zoro's voice? A scream of pain. What happened? What a painful emotion. Is this Zoro's emotion? Is he dying? How is that possible? Wake me up, my body. With a growl, Luffy opened his eyes instantly. At this moment, the body is relaxed and intoxicating, but Luffy can no longer care about the changes in his body. Zoro's screams filled his ears. In observation Haki, he clearly felt the pain, as if he would die at any moment. Second gear. Without any movement, Luffy's body was steaming instantly, and the whole person disappeared in place in an instant. What? The bear seemed to have sensed something, showing a surprised expression. This is the second time he's surprised, the first time when Zoro asked for his life. A figure exuding rich steam passed over his head in an instant. Then he pulled out Zoro, who had inserted his hands into the bloody illusory meat ball. Just less than 10 seconds. Zoro's body was already covered with blood. There is also a steady stream of blood flowing from his body. And that huge meat ball has only been reduced by a third. What happened? Zoro, what are you doing? Luffy's knowledge at this moment can clearly perceive the horror brought by the bloody flesh ball in front of him, but just now Zoro directly inserted his hands into it. Nothing happened. The severe pain made Zoro speechless, and he said with difficulty, "Get out of the way, Luffy, this is an agreement between men." Zoro's face didn't change because of Luffy's appearance. Bear's strength, he knew, was much stronger than Gecko Moria's. That was not an enemy they could deal with at this moment. They could only continue the previous agreement and exchange his life for Luffy's. Only in this way can their pirate group continue. As for whether he will live or die when the time comes, he has already made up his mind. That's your accumulated fatigue and injuries, Straw Hat Boy, you have a good partner, roar Noah, and I promised to exchange his life for yours. It's better for you to respect his will now. Shang said calmly. I don't know what agreement you made, since this is my injury and fatigue, why let Zoro bear it, this is my thing. I will not let my companions bear the pain that I should bear. Luffy said loudly. Then he directly pressed one hand into the huge bloody flesh ball. Boom. The heart seemed to stop for a moment. The indescribable pain directly made Luffy scream. At this moment, he knew why Zoro couldn't bear the pain with his will. This is equivalent to condensing the pain of the previous battle, and within a few tens of seconds, a comprehensive superposition burst out. This is simply a pain that ordinary people can't imagine. However, even though the screams filled the thriller barque, Luffy's hand never protruded from the bloody meat ball. Chapter 2 Conquerors, Air Strike. Advertise here. Luffy. Zoro's pupils shrank. Then a difficult smile appeared on the face covered with blood. Why, he would sacrifice his life because of a stupid captain, it is because of this kind of character and courage. Bearing the captain's pain is what the crew should do, you stupid captain. Zoro dragged his body with difficulty, took a step forward, then looked at the bloody fleshy ball in front of him, a look of fear flashed in his eyes, then gritted his teeth, and inserted his hand directly into the bloody fleshy ball. In the next second, two different screams sounded together. The bear standing not far away was completely overwhelmed by an inexplicable shock in his heart at this moment. This kind of shock was stronger than Zoro's death alone before. He subconsciously took a step forward, then stopped, looking at the two screaming in pain. This scene is a bit funny, but any man on the sea will feel respect when he sees this scene. After a while, the bloody flesh ball completely dissipated. Luffy and Zoro stood with their arms crossed, their faces calm, blood flowed from both of their faces and bodies, and gathered into a pool of blood under their bodies. Heavy breathing is like a bellows. Their injuries were serious, but both of them stood up straight, as if falling down meant admitting defeat. Looking at the two people standing in front of them, anyone with this kind of injury would be unconscious, but they can still maintain consciousness and stand. The courage brought by the two seriously injured at this moment. The bear who was Shichibukai still couldn't help but want to back away. They may be very weak at the moment, but one day, they will stand at the top of this sea. One Piece and the world's #1 swordsman. Shang thought to himself. They have ambitions, but also have the will and courage to match their ambitions. As expected of your son, Long, he has a group of good companions. My task is also completed, Straw Hat Boy, this may be the last time we meet, goodbye forever. Shang looked at Luffy and said in a gentle tone. He turned around with heavy steps, ready to leave. However, he stopped abruptly. A powerful and terrifying aura directly enveloped his surroundings. Behind him, Luffy lowered his hands, and thick white steam rose from his body. One of his eyes was hidden in the shadows, covered with blood, and the other eye was sharp and scary. If Rob Lucci was here right now, he would recognize that look, the look that Straw Hat had when he fought him to the end. Sharp and terrifying, completely different from the usual carefree look. As this conquerors, bears haven't been reinvented quite yet. He could feel this Haki hanging over him at this moment, creating a strong sense of oppression on his consciousness. Conqueror's Haki, a Haki that can only be awakened by those who have the qualifications of a king. Why is this Haki so powerful? Shang secretly thought that not only can he be locked up alone, but also make him, the Shichibukai, feel oppressed. He was keenly aware of it. Compared with the state of the Straw Hat Boy when he fought with Moria before, he has changed. He didn't make a full shot before, and he didn't feel it yet. At this moment, Luffy's momentum exploded, and he immediately felt the opponent's strength. Doesn't look like a rookie pirate in the first half of the Grand Line at all. I can sense your emotions. You didn't hurt our emotions, and you were even faintly close. However, you hurt my companion, and I won't let you leave easily. In the knowledgeable perception, Shang has no murderous intentions from beginning to end. Instead, there is a very sad and determined mood. However, the injuries of Sanji, Nami, Usopp, Frankie, Chopper, Robin, Brook, and most importantly Zoro. This is what pissed Luffy the most. Especially Zoro. He had absorbed a lot of that bloody flesh ball, if all of it was applied to Zoro, he would probably die. No matter what purpose the bear came with, it was a fact that Zoro almost died because of it. So, Luffy won't be so blind. Besides, if you just go back like this, you won't be able to do business, so let me punch you a few times. After speaking, Luffy's figure disappeared in an instant. The figure of the bear also disappeared in an instant. The figure appeared again, and the distance between the two was very close. The bear's huge figure bent down slightly, and the huge figure turned into a shadow and enveloped Luffy's body. He raised his palm, and the fleshy ball in his palm slightly emitted a black light, as if the space was slightly compressed. Rubber. Luffy's body was hanging in the air, stretching his whole body in the air, and he threw his right fist vigorously behind him to accumulate power, and the invisible force covered his fist and wrist. It's useless. Bear's voice was extremely calm. Under the meatball fruit that he can bounce off everything. In a frontal collision, it is almost impossible to lose. Jet, the gun, punch out. The expected collision between the fist and the meatball did not happen. Between Luffy's fist and the bear's ball, there was an invisible space twisting. This space is like a real thing, between Luffy's fist and the meatball. What's that? Shot in the air. Zoro watched the duel between the two sides in the distance, his pupils shrank. This scene beyond human common sense happened here, which made people have to be shocked. It's the Conqueror's wrap plus the armor color wrap. How is that possible? Compared with Zoro who didn't know much, Shang's heart has completely caused an uproar at this moment. As a Shichibukai, he is a powerful one, and he has seen too many fights between top powerhouses in this sea. How could he not recognize what is the air attack used by Luffy in front of him? Only Conqueror's winding can do this. But how is this possible? The Straw Hat Boy is just a rookie who has just been out to sea for less than a year. It is very surprising to awaken Conquerors, and he can actually use Conqueror's entanglement. You know, this is a method at the Four Emperors level. Although it's still a little immature, I can rest assured. Shang suddenly said softly, feeling relieved. Boom. A terrifying air wave erupted during the collision between the two, sweeping everything around. The air wave impacted everything and covered everything. Wait until the storm clears. The bear figure has completely disappeared. He was comforting just now. Luffy's sense of knowledge sensed Shang's emotions just now. Although it's Shichibukai, he seems to be really friendly. Who the hell is he? Luffy is a little speechless. A Shichibukai, why does he have such great kindness towards them? Chapter 3 Awakening and Change. Advertise here. But the identity of the bear is quickly forgotten by Luffy, who now has more important things to worry about. That's Zoro's injury. Hey, Zoro, are you okay? Luffy asked worriedly. Don't worry, I won't die. Zoro whispered hard. Hey, Luffy, get me my knife. Your knife. Luffy froze for a moment, only to realize that the three knives were not on Zoro's body at the moment. Fortunately, the three knives were nearby, and after taking 2 steps, Luffy saw the 3 knives still on the ruins. When will a swordsman be separated from his sword? Probably only when he is facing death. Just now, with the belief that he must die, Zoro threw Hidao Yuan and the other 2 knives here, and then went to die. Luffy lowered his head, put the straw hat behind his head on his head, and pressed down hard. Eyes shrouded in shadow, just looking at the 3 knives discarded on the ground. If there wasn't that mysterious power, if he didn't wake up in time, if the bear really came with the determination to kill them, then the consequences can be imagined. I'm still too weak. This is the last time, I won't be so weak again. Under the straw hat, there is a man's conscious, deep voice. This is not the first time. The same is true for Aokiji before, the gap between them and the top powerhouses in this sea is really too big. Like just now, even if he suddenly mastered 3 powerful and terrifying powers. The confrontation with the bear still did not gain the upper hand. The strength of the bear is terrible, as Shichibukai, he is much stronger than Gecko Moria. And Aokiji, a marine admiral, is stronger than a bear. The matter of Aokiji and Shang made Luffy thoroughly understand that this sea will not wait for you to become stronger. The charm of the sea lies in the unknown. During the voyage, what kind of things and people you meet are completely unknown. This kind of unknown is full of the charm of freedom, but it is also full of endless dangers. He started from sailing, and he was ready to die in battle. However, he still has companions, and he is no longer the Straw Hat Luffy who went to sea alone. He is the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, and he bears not only his own life and dreams, but also the lives and dreams of his companions. If you can't even protect the captain, how can you talk about becoming the world's #1 swordsman? This is what Luffy heard Zoro say when he was in a coma. If you can't even protect the crew, what qualifications do you have to be the captain? What qualifications are there to talk about One Piece? Luffy took off the straw hat, looked at it seriously and said in a low voice. It seems to be talking to this straw hat again, and it is also like talking to the 3 famous knives on the ground that were abandoned by the owner. At this moment, his consciousness since he went to sea changed. After a while, all the personnel came to life. Shang obviously kept his hand, otherwise, with his ability, none of the people present would have survived. Luffy, Zoro, why are you 2 injured so badly? I'll bandage you right away. The first time Chopper woke up, when he saw Luffy and Zoro who were covered in blood, he hurriedly said with a serious expression. Don't look like you are usually out of tune. But when it comes to critical moments, anyone in the Straw Hat Pirates is very reliable. I'm fine, Chopper, go bandage Zoro first, he's dying. Luffy sat on a raised ruined stone next to Zoro, squinting and smiling. He really doesn't have much to do. Although it looks like his injury is serious. But in fact, about half of his previous injuries were absorbed by Zoro. Coupled with the mysterious voice he heard when he was in a coma, as well as the mysterious power to repair and strengthen his body, his injuries have almost healed. Even every minute, every second, he could feel his body getting stronger little by little. This feeling is very obvious. Indeed, as the mysterious voice said, his body is evolving. Idiot, I'm far from dead. Zoro forced himself to sit up straight and said loudly to Luffy. With only ordinary injuries, Zoro's body will not reach the state of dying. After a while, he was able to speak loudly. Zoro, your body is very bad now, don't move around and wait for me to bandage. Chopper got angry instantly, punched Zoro on the head, and said loudly. Hey, Chopper, Zoro is seriously injured, don't use too much force. Usopp quickly covered his face and shouted loudly. Ah, Zoro passed out, Zoro is going to die. Calm down, Usopp, Zoro is not such an easy man to die. Luffy smiled and said calmly. The calm and steady tone instantly calmed everyone present. Luffy. Sanji looked at Luffy in some shock. He felt that Luffy seemed to have undergone some different changes. This change was unique, and only companions like them who lived together day and night could keenly feel the difference. What made him even more puzzled was what happened during his coma. Luffy woke up early. Where's the bear? How did it disappear? And the green algae head, why is there such a serious injury? Compared to Sanji's doubts, others paid more attention to the subtle changes in Luffy. Of course, not everyone is aware of it. At least the carefree Usopp and Frankie apparently didn't notice. On the contrary, Nami and Robin, two delicate girls, feel the most sensitive. Luffy is there some change? Nami covered his mouth and looked at Luffy who was not far away in surprise. It seems that he has become a little calmer than before. It seems that something happened while we were in a coma. Robin whispered, but turned to smile and looked at Luffy. No matter what, it seems that our captain seems to have some awareness. In Robin's view, some changes in Luffy should be considered a good thing. Night. Meat. I want meat. Luffy slapped the table and shouted loudly. Like a wayward child. Sure enough, I still feel wrong. He still hasn't changed at all. Nami looked at Luffy, couldn't help covering his face and said. It seems that the feeling is wrong. Robin couldn't help but put his hands on his mouth, narrowed his eyes, and laughed softly. Sure enough, it was still their worrying captain. Chapter 4. Do you want to become stronger? Zoro. Advertise here. Unlike Moria, Shang's strength is among the top among Shichibukai. If he made a move, it would be almost impossible for the Straw Hat Boy to escape. It seems to have failed. The specific reason for the failure is unknown. After all, Bartholomew Kuma is not currently under our direct jurisdiction. Rear Admiral who reported said. Garp let out a sigh of relief, while Sengoku frowned, waved his hand, and signaled the headquarters to go down to Rear Admiral. Bartholomew Kuma, Sengoku muttered under his breath. He had heard about the deeds of this Shichibukai. It was originally a kingdom of kingdoms, but because of some secret reasons from the world government, it was forced to voluntarily accept the transformation of Vegapunk. That is the pacifist plan. It's just that Sengoku has always felt that Shang's matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface, and there are many things hidden behind it, and even he, the Marine Marshal, has not seen through it at this moment. You can rest easy now, Garp. What are you talking about? I don't understand, Sengoku. Garp changed the subject. You should prepare yourself mentally, Garp. Sooner or later, the Straw Hat Boy will end up like Fire Fist. Sengoku said coldly. Garp fell silent. What can he do? Let's not talk about his grandson. The son is still the leader of the Revolutionary Army. These can't be changed. And, Ace. Garp sighed heavily in his heart. His face was ugly. He tried his best not to think about these things these days, but today he was clicked by Sengoku. In the entire marshal's office, the atmosphere was so heavy that it was about to drip water. And Sengoku looked at the old friend with an ugly look, and after a while, he sighed and said unintentionally. Compared to the big figures in this sea, the Straw Hat Boy is still a nobody. Under the current situation, after this incident, the government should not put too much energy on the Straw Hat Boy. Garp didn't speak, just sipped his tea silently. ... Thriller bark. As Sengoku said, after the bear took Gecko Moria. World government also didn't put much energy into small characters like the Straw Hat Pirates. After a night of banquets, Brook officially confirmed to join the Straw Hat Pirates. Become the 9th member of the Straw Hat Pirates as a musician. After bidding farewell to the 3 terrifying sailing ship Lola Pirates, Luffy and the others set sail again. 9 days later, a sea with a warm climate. Why did you come to me? In the top room of the sunny Watchtower, Zoro was doing knife swing exercises with a huge barbell. This is also due to the fact that the previous injuries did not allow him to absorb them all by himself, coupled with Chopper's superb medical skills, he did not enter a near-death state and did not hurt the root cause. So in about 5 days, his injury has basically healed. And there were no particularly serious sequelae. In the case of the bear, it wasn't just Luffy who really woke up, Zoro was also included. They are the captain and co-captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Luffy, like Zoro, is a pure combatant on the ship, unlike the others who are more or less special identities. Therefore, the strength of the two of them also directly affected the safety of the entire Straw Hat Pirates during the voyage. Since recovering from the injury, Zoro has stepped up his training. He used to sleep and drink a lot before exercising, but now he is exercising crazily and sleeping occasionally. It is enough to witness the strength of his consciousness. I suddenly found that you are more comfortable here than the bow, Zoro, haha, the view is so wide. Luffy leaned against the window and looked out. The room on the Watchtower is the highest point of the sunny, and staying in it is indeed very impressive. Who? Follow you, who? Zoro adjusted his breathing, like a precision machine, swung the barbell in his hands that was taller than a human, and the angle didn't change the slightest every time he swung it. The sweat on his body formed a small puddle all over the ground, and his eyes didn't change at all. Only ahead. It was as if he could see the tall figure of Kuma in front of him, not just Shang, but also the Marine Admiral named Aokiji that he had met before. These seas are as strong as monsters. At the very end, it is naturally the man who was carrying a huge black knife and stands on top of all the swordsmen in the world. The arm was very sore, and his whole body was almost at the limit, but he still swung vigorously. To suffer all kinds of hardships and never get tired of them, this is my way of Shura. It's really hard work, Zoro. Luffy looked at Zoro with his face propped up. If you're just here to talk crap, get out, Luffy. Gritting his teeth, Zoro whispered. Luffy didn't speak again. A moment later, when Zoro took a deep breath, dragged his sore arm, and prepared to swing beyond the limit. Do you want to become stronger, Zoro? Luffy said abruptly beside him. Boom. The huge barbell hit the floor directly. Do you guys want to be beaten? Zoro grabbed Luffy's collar and shook it vigorously, shouting loudly. When I was practicing, I kept chattering beside me. Chapter 5 Luffy's Strength, Zoro's Frustration. Advertise here. Sunny's Watchtower Room. Are you saying that you have a certain power that can strengthen yourself and strengthen others? Sitting cross-legged across from Luffy, Zoro raised an eyebrow and asked. Yes, when I fell into a coma after beating Moria in Thriller Bark before, this power directly strengthened my body and gave me several special powers. Luffy spoke up. Special power. One is the ability to cover the surface of the body like a film, which can strengthen my attack power and defense power, and the other is the ability to perceive. I can perceive emotions in a wide range and can preempt attacks. Precognition. There is also the ability to release it, which can shock others, and the ability to wrap it around the arm to strike from the air. The mysterious voice seems to say what kind of Haki's ability it is, I don't know. Luffy tilted his head and said. So that's it, this is the power you used to collide with the bear before. Zoro muses, he's the only one in the Straw Hats who has seen Luffy and the bear fight. The collision between Luffy and the bear, the blow from the air, left a deep impression on Zoro. He thought it was caused by the ability of the bear, but now it seems that it is the ability awakened by Luffy, which is indeed a very powerful force. Otherwise, under normal conditions, Shang-Na is much stronger than Moria, and even Luffy in good condition cannot be his opponent. Experiment, your ability, Zoro said suddenly. Test. Luffy was still a little puzzled. Then he suddenly saw a knife appearing directly in front of him. Boom. The face was instantly covered by armament Haki, and even the sharp famous knife only made the sound of metal and iron. There was no injury on Luffy's face. However, the shock is still there. Rubber Fruit was already afraid of sharp weapons such as swords, which was engraved in Luffy's heart, but the front face was suddenly chopped off towards the face, so don't mention the feeling. Zoro, you bastard, are you trying to kill me? This time it was Luffy who directly grabbed Zoro's collar angrily. I'm experimenting. There is no experiment with a knife. The sound of two people fighting each other came from the watchtower, which was very obvious. Those two guys are really making a fuss. Nami sat under the parasol on the deck, looked at the observation deck, and couldn't help but sighed helplessly. Before I thought Luffy was a little more mature, I was really an idiot. Isn't this very good? Robin smiled softly while flipping through the book. It's very energetic. I just wish the two of them had less energy like that. Watchtower top. Luffy and Zoro had calmed down, analyzing calmly. Your power called Haki can actually directly defend against swords. There is also a power similar to foreknowledge. Yes, Luffy said with a smile. This ability is very interesting. After speaking, Luffy directly closed his eyes and stood with his back to Zoro. Zoro, you take your knife and cut me now. Are you serious? Zoro raised his eyebrows in surprise. Ah, come on. With his back to Zoro, Luffy's tone calmed down inexplicably, giving off an inexplicable sense of oppression in his calmness. Zoro obviously noticed the change in Luffy and didn't say much. Directly and quickly cut down with a knife, of course, with the back of the knife. With eyes closed, Luffy seemed to be able to feel everything in the pitch-black environment. Not visual, not auditory, but something deeper, vigor, emotion, or some other more sensitive information perception. With his back to Zoro, just slightly to one side. The back of the knife fell directly against the edge of the clothes. It seemed that the knife was very close to the clothes. In fact, Zoro could clearly feel that the blow didn't even touch the clothes. This time, Zoro was obviously surprised for a moment. But immediately, his eyes became serious. The knife was cut out in an instant, and the speed was astonishingly fast. But it was useless, it was still on the light side, with its back turned and eyes closed, but Luffy's actions seemed to have predicted Zoro's attack path in advance. One knife, two knives, and finally three knives. Before he knew it, Zoro had already used the blade he was most used to, but even so, the dense cutting space composed of three blades did not touch Luffy at all. Even during this process, he kept his back turned. What is this? Stopping swinging the knife, even Zoro couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration. All along, there is not much difference in strength between him and Luffy is at most slightly stronger than him. But now it's clear that Luffy is more than a little bit better than him. This kind of monster-level dodging ability, coupled with the ability just now that even a famous knife can't break the face. Not to mention, there was the powerful mid-air strike when he collided with the bear before. Everything indicated that Luffy's strength at this moment was completely beyond his imagination. Not only that, but my physical fitness has also improved a lot, like this. Luffy stretched out his hand, and the rubber arm immediately stretched, and then wrapped all the exercise equipment in the entire room, and then exerted force one by one. All the training equipment present were lifted up. Seeing that Zoro was a little bit dumbfounded, this strength was already dozens of times stronger than his. And speed. The voice fell. Luffy, who was originally standing in front of Zoro, appeared behind him in an instant. Luffy showed his big white face and said with a smile. I don't need to open second gear, and my speed is almost the same as when I was in second gear before. These are the changes in the past 10 days. Physical fitness, there is a qualitative change almost every day, so strong that Luffy himself is a little unbelievable. There is also the fruit ability. It seems that there are two more interesting states, but the power is a bit high, so it is not easy to experiment on the ship. Okay, I see, Luffy. Zoro couldn't help interrupting Luffy, he couldn't help but sigh. The captain, who was almost the same strength before, left himself far away in just a few days. This made Zoro, who pursued swordsmanship and awakened the awareness of strength, feel an inexplicable sense of frustration. But Zoro was Zoro after all, a man who walked on the way of Shira. He quickly adjusted his emotions. So, you just asked me if I want to become stronger, is that what you mean? Yup. Can you make me as strong as you are now? Perhaps. Chapter 6 Combat Power Ceiling, Zoro Evolution. Advertise here. Luffy had a smile on his face and a calm voice. And Zoro looked at Luffy with big eyes and small eyes at the moment, and after a while, he couldn't keep calm. Then what are you waiting for? Use it for me, Zoro said loudly. Hey, I thought Zoro, your character, would dislike this kind of external power. Luffy said with some surprise. Why do you despise external power? Like if there is a better famous knife in front of you, why don't I use it? Zoro said lightly. Also, this sea is too dangerous. Compared to that, I want to have the power to protect my companions. We are too weak. No, the weak one is you, Zoro. Luffy shook his hand solemnly and said, I am very strong now, stronger than the bear I met before, even stronger than Aokiji, Grandpa. You bastard. Seeing Luffy's serious look, Zoro felt furious. It just can't be refuted, because it is indeed a fact. Moreover, according to Luffy's words, Zoro is more able to perceive Luffy's strength. Stronger than Kuma, even stronger than Aokiji, Garp. The former is strong Shichibukai, the latter two are Marine Admiral, the highest combat power, and the other is Marine Hero, the man who has driven Luo Jia into desperation countless times. In other words, Luffy's current strength has already stood at the top of the ocean. Then I use it. Luffy reaches out, pointing in the void. Zoro leaned over curiously, but saw nothing. It's an unreal light curtain that only Luffy can see. It is also his own system, called the Combat Power Ceiling System. As the name suggests, it is a system that can raise a person's combat power to the level of the world's ceiling. It's just that the people who can act are limited to members of the Straw Hat Pirates. The main function is to use evolution points to evolve, which can improve a person's physical fitness, skills and tactics, including development ability and so on. In the past few days, Luffy has understood all the capabilities of this system. This system seems to have possessed him very early on. The system's logbook records all the battles he has fought since he left Windmill Village. Fighting is also the source of evolution points. Whether it is victory or defeat, you can get points, but the points you get for victory are more. The acquisition of points also has a lot to do with the strength of the opponent. For example, in the battles experienced so far, although Aokiji did not win that time, the evolution points he was given were the most among all battles. Moreover, it's not just his battles. Since he started recruiting partners, what has been recorded is the evolution points gained from the battles of the real pirate group. Although it has been less than a year since he went to sea, he has indeed experienced a lot of battles in this year. Even if he had pushed his combat power to a very high level before, there were still many evolutionary points. Luffy found the image of Zoro among the crew and chose to evolve it. Scanning the individual successfully, Roronoa Zoro, the deputy captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Estimated to spend 10,000 evolution points, do you want to evolve? Evolution. Luffy tucked his nose, and pressed against the illusory light curtain. He still has 20,000 evolution points, more than enough to evolve Zoro. The comprehensive evolution of physical fitness begins, and the estimated time is 5 days. Conqueror's Haki evolution begins, evolution completes. The evolution of sword skills has begun, and the evolution is complete. Is this the power of the ability you got? After Luffy determined to evolve, Zoro directly felt an indescribable change. Everything in the world is changing right now. Hum. There was a slight buzzing sound, and the word Hidao in Zoro's hand instantly turned black. Black knife. Zoro looked at the word, Hidao, in his hand, and couldn't believe it. The black knife is a further form of all famous swords, but for the black knife, even the former owner did not tell him more. He always thought that the black knife was forged from a special material, but when that special power covered the knife, the words Hidao turned into a black knife. You must know that the same is a big sharp knife. The Chushui he just sent to Longma is much stronger than he Daoyi's words in terms of weight and hardness. The hardness of the knife and the transmission of power are indeed much stronger. Zoro waved and said with a word. This is also one of the characteristics of Haidao. When he used Chushui before, the sword energy he wielded was several times stronger than that of Gush, and the current Hidaoyi characters also have the characteristics of Haidao. Moreover, I can clearly feel the progress of my swordsmanship. Zoro closed his eyes and brandished the 3 knives in his hands. Although he didn't sway his sword energy forcefully, his sword skills were obviously more refined and powerful than before. I can already see the figure of that man. Zoro opened his eyes, which were unbelievably bright and sharp. When he was in the restaurant on the sea, he once fought against the world's #1 swordsman, Haki. That match made him see the gap between him and the #1 in the world. But now, he could already clearly see the sword skills that man used back then. If there is another fight, he is confident that in terms of swordsmanship, he will not be much worse than Haki, or even stronger. This is my 3-sword style. Zoro looked at the 3 knives in his hand. One day, my reputation will resound through the heavens. Speaking of which, Zoro, your evolution is really fast. Luffy spoke from the side. When I first evolved, except for Conqueror's Haki, it took 10 days to complete the evolution. As for you, only physical fitness needs 10 days to evolve. Conqueror's Haki and swordsmanship are all evolved in an instant. What did you say? Conqueror's Haki. What have I evolved? Zoro saw something and asked. You only evolve body, Conqueror's Haki, and swordsmanship. Conqueror's Haki. Zoro pondered. It seems that the ability to cover the body and sword, predict the ability to dodge, and the ability to strike through the air are also called Conqueror's Haki. Soga. That's how it is. Luffy hammered the palm of his left hand with his right hand, suddenly realized, but immediately tilted his head and asked. But speaking of it, what exactly is Conqueror's Haki? I seem to have heard of Haki when I was very young, but I forgot. I don't know, I haven't heard of it. Zoro smiled and said, for such a professional matter, just ask a professional. Professionals. Luffy tilted his head, puzzled. Chapter 7 Conqueror's Haki. Advertise here. On the deck of the Sunny. Luffy sat on the other side of the small round table under the umbrella, with her face on the table. Zoro stood aside. I don't know when around. Frankie Brook, Chopper Usopp, they all gathered. And right in the center is Robin sitting opposite Luffy. Haki. Robin's voice was slightly deep and gentle, with an intellectual magnetism. When I was under Crocodile, I heard some. This is a relatively common force in the New World, and it is relatively rare in the first half of the Grand Line and the 4 Seas. It belongs to the power that only the strong can control. There are 3 types of Haki: Armament Haki, Observation Haki, and finally Conqueror's Haki. Among them, Armament Haki is a very restrained ability to demon fruit power, especially the Logia fruit ability user. The armed color can capture the Logia ability user, even if it is elemental, it can be easily hit. Oh, so to speak, the previous Crocodile, Smoke Man, and Thunder Man can also be directly hit. Luffy couldn't help laughing when he heard that. These 3 people are also the 3 people who left a deep impression on him. He didn't hit the Smoke Man from the beginning to the end. Crocodile and the Lightning Man Enel were also defeated by mistake due to their attributes. Under normal circumstances, he has nothing to do with these people. Normally, that's how it is. Robin spoke. Crocodile itself is Logia, and also a Shichibukai who has entered the New World. Naturally, there is no big mistake in understanding Haki. As for Observation Haki, I don't know the specific principle. I only know that it is an ability to dodge attacks. It seems that it is not through the 5 senses, but a deeper perception. Zoro on the side was thoughtful. Observation Haki, he has also mastered this kind of power. He has an inexplicable predictability for a person's next attack, not because of his vision capture, or something else. Just like Luffy, even with his eyes closed, he can easily dodge. The last conquerors are relatively rare. It is said that this is the qualification of a king, and it can easily deter any living body. Robin closed the book in his hand and said, Shanks. Luffy said loudly, this is Shanks' ability. He once saved me from the King of the Sea, and he just scared the King of the Sea with a single glance. By the way, there is also Grandpa Hammer. He also used his eyes to scare away a giant bear. Luffy finally remembered why he was familiar with the word Haki. When he was young, when he was practicing with Sabo Ace in Goa Kingdom, Zung Jin was rescued by a grandfather with a wooden hammer. The opponent once forced the giant bear back with a glance, and told them that this is Haki's power. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly think of it and ask about Haki? Robin is the most sensitive and intelligent among the Straw Hats. She has noticed some changes in Luffy. Zoro stood behind Luffy, silent. This matter is not for him to say, it should be up to Captain Luffy to choose whether to speak or not. After all, this magical ability is indeed somewhat beyond ordinary people's cognition, even if there is such a thing as Devil Fruit ability. Ah, it's because I got a special ability when I was in the Thriller barque. Luffy didn't mean to hide it. He showed White Fang, squinted his eyes and said with a smile. After a while, everyone froze in place. Even the most mature and stable Robin is the same. Can Admiral also be able to defeat the power? Robin, more than anyone else, understands the implications of that statement. Compared with the other existences in the Straw Hats who have never seen the big world, the knowledge and information that Robin has allowed her to understand more clearly what the word Admiral represents. Marine's highest combat power. The enemies they faced should at least have a bounty of more than 3 billion. And Luffy's 300 million bounty seems high, but in fact, the gap between him and Admiral is like a moat. The previous meeting with Aokiji on that unnamed island, as well as the previous fight with the bear, can clearly prove this point. Admiral, so handsome. Little stars appeared in the eyes of Chopper and Usopp, and they twisted their bodies and said loudly. Hey, Luffy, can you evolve my combat power? Usopp exclaimed. His goal is the smallest of them all, and the easiest to achieve. That is to become a brave sea warrior. As long as he has strong strength, he will be able to achieve this goal with a high probability. Chopper leaned forward, also looking forward to it. Although its ideal is a panacea, strength is also what he needs. Especially with its almost nonsensical bounty, he also wanted to get rid of his status as a pet and become an existence with a very high bounty. There are so many wonders in the sea. Sanji lit a cigarette and exhaled lightly. He's the definition of the resourceful general, and he's extremely calm at the moment. Compared with the strength shown in this matter, what he saw was whether there were hidden dangers behind it. Is there no side effect to the improvement of strength? Probably not. My body has been upgraded. I don't feel any discomfort. Instead, I feel that I have never been in such a good state. Luffy thought for a while, then spoke. As the captain, he hadn't tried it with his own body, so how could he use it for the crew? Even Zoro dared to use this power on Zoro because he had already tried it. Otherwise, he had already explored the simple ability of this system 7 or 8 days ago. Why did he only speak now? Luffy. Nami looked at Luffy, a little moved. She sensed the meaning of Luffy's words. Although the captain is a bit stupid, he is very reliable in most things. Nami couldn't help but rang out when Luffy put the straw hat on her head in Kokoyasi village. It is the same now, although carefree, but in the open and in the dark, but always in front of them. In this case, I have nothing to say. This is a good thing. If possible, I suggest converting that so-called evolution point into strength as soon as possible. Sanji exhaled a puff of smoke, and the expression in the smoke was less wretched and more dull and serious. After the previous incident, we should also recognize a fact. The closer we get to New World, the weaker our strength is. Everyone's excited expressions fell silent, and the atmosphere fell silent for a moment. Chapter 8 Sanji Evolution, see Xiaoba. Advertise here. Face the bear before. It's not just Luffy and Zoro who feel the difference in strength from the heart. Also includes Sanji. Sanji's feeling is even more obvious than Zoro's. Zoro managed to fight the bear twice. And he just smashed his foot up, and the whole bone was cracked. The opponent was unharmed. He, Zoro, and Luffy have always been the top 3 of the Straw Hat Pirates, but now he is the worst performer, so naturally there is a kind of anger in his heart. It's just that he has always had the main job of being a chef, so he has kept these emotions in his heart. Hey, Luffy, your ability to improve requires special points, right? How many people can you improve? Sanji asked. After upgrading Zoro, there are still about 10,000 points left, probably only one more person can be promoted. Luffy sat up straight, crossed his feet on the stool, and spoke. At the beginning, I used 20,000 evolution points for evolution, and Zoro used 10,000 evolution points. For you, it's probably about 10,000. Speaking of which, the gap between him and Zoro is not that big, but the requirement for evolution points is fully double. This seems to be because of his rubber fruit. His rubber fruit doesn't seem to be rubber fruit, or rubber fruit, but not quite. It also has another posture, zone, the fruit of everyone, the phantom beast species, and the form of Nika. Most of the evolutionary points seem to be used in the evolutionary fruit, but it has to be said that even if he has not used the newly unlocked fruit ability, he can still feel that powerful. Does that mean there is one more person? Sanji thought to himself. I don't need this for the time being. I don't like fighting. I just like reading. When you have spare time, think about me. Robin glanced at the people around him, propped his cheeks, and said with a gentle smile. She actually saw Sanji's dissatisfaction and determination to become stronger, so she immediately gave up her quota. If it was her who was in flight before, she would definitely not give up any chance to strengthen herself. But now, she has reliable partners around her, so she can pursue history with peace of mind instead of fighting. I don't want it anymore. Anyway, I don't have much talent in combat. Nami waved his hand. I shouldn't improve much, so I also gave up. Compared with improving the body, I want the technology of mechanical transformation more. Frankie said. Hehehe. I also give up. I don't have a physical body to improve. In a circle, almost everyone gave up the method of promotion with their own hobbies. In fact, who wouldn't want to have a greater power that can be boosted? It's just that they gave up this power to companions who needed it more. Everyone. Sanji looked at the partners around him, and didn't say anything hypocritically. Surrounded by partners who have fought side by side many times, superfluous words are meaningless, and everything will be reflected in the future getting along and fighting. Scanning the individual successfully, Straw Hat Pirates chef Vince Moke Sanji. Evolution is estimated to be 8,000 evolution points, whether to evolve or not. Evolution. The comprehensive evolution of physical fitness begins, and the estimated time is 5 days. The full evolution of Conqueror's Haki started, and the evolution was successful. The comprehensive evolution of physical kicking skills has begun, and the evolution has been successful. Except for physical fitness, other evolutions are very rapid. In the blink of an eye, Sanji feels completely different. Zoro and Luffy were the first to notice the change. Their knowledgeable color can feel the instantaneous change of each other's breath. It's like changing from a harmless kitten to a tiger. So far, the 3 top combat powers of the Straw Hat Pirates have basically evolved. Zoro and Sanji are just short of a comprehensive evolution of physical fitness. Moreover, the physical evolution of these two people is much faster than his original one, and it only takes 5 days. As this armament Haki, it feels like there is a hard protective film on the foot, and there is no weight at all. Sanji stuffed his hands into his pockets. Armament Haki wrapped around the foot and kicked out with one kick. It turned into countless afterimages in the air, and when it collided with the iron sheet, the bones inside could be clearly felt, and the flesh and blood were not affected by the slightest shock force. If it's another kick to the bear's head this time, he will definitely not break his bones as shamefully as last time. A day later, ships sail on the sea. It's just that it's not just Sunny anymore. Beside the Sunny, there is also a small boat, which is a mobile stall on the sea, specializing in selling takoyaki stalls. And the owner of this mobile booth is also an acquaintance of Luffy and the others. The Murloc Hachi who once fought in Kokoyasi village. It's just that the current Xiaoba has changed his mind a long time ago, and now sells takoyaki in the sea. Along with him is Kami, a beautiful mermaid lady, and a starfish named Papagu. They were met by Luffy and the others by accident this morning. Originally, in front of the Red Line, when using the shark submarine to find a way to the Fishman Island, I encountered a huge sea beast. Then Luffy knocked down the sea beast with a punch, and Kami and the others popped out of the sea beast's mouth. Then he rescued Hachi from Dabaru, a man who looked exactly like Sanji's bounty list. So in order to atone for their sins and thank Luffy for their help, Hachi volunteered to make takoyaki for them for free, and told them how to go to the Fishman Island. No, I still want to laugh, why does that man named Dabalu look so much like Sanji? Luffy sat in front of the bar of the small 8 takoyaki stall, laughing loudly. Hey, Luffy, that doesn't look like me, it just looks like the graffiti on my bounty list. With a dangerous look on his face, Sanji poked Luffy's protruding mouth vigorously with his fingers and said. Ha, doesn't it look exactly like you? Stinky cook. While eating takoyaki, Zoro provocatively made up the knife without paying attention. Huh, you want to fight here? Chloral ahead. Sanji held the takoyaki in one hand and stepped on the sitting Zoro with the other. Zoro also drew his knife immediately, and the two pinched together instantly. Luffy didn't care about the fight between the two, and just swept away the takoyaki in front of them at a very fast speed. I really didn't expect that someone would actually look exactly like the graffiti on Sanji's bounty list. Chopper spoke from the side. If it wasn't for Sanji, he would have died very interestingly. Robin smiled at the side, speaking very touching words in a calm tone. Chapter 9 Sabaody Archipelago. Advertise here. After eating and drinking. Luffy also asked about how to get to the Fishman Island. After rescuing Xiaoba from Dabaru's flying fish knights, Xiaoba volunteered to take them to the Fishman Island. Under normal circumstances, if you want to go to New World, there are only 2 ways to go. Kami sat on the deck of the Sunny and spoke. One is from the great city above the Red Line, through which Mariajoy walks, to the New World. Walk through the city above the Red Line. And the boat? Nami asked in surprise. Naturally, it is temporarily put or discarded, and then buy a new ship on the side of New World. This point is absolutely walking. The Sunny is my masterpiece, and I must not give up. Frankie directly refused. It meant nothing to him if he wasn't able to sail the Sunny to the New World. Yeah, Sunny is our partner, Luffy said, putting a personality on the matter. Actually, Luffy, you don't have to worry, because this road is absolutely unworkable for pirates, because Mariajoy is the residence of the world's nobles. If you want to pass through Mariajoy, you must obtain government approval. As for the second way, it is to go to the Fishman Island. In the deep sea 10,000 meters below the Red Line, there is a huge hole. Most pirates go to New World through this deep sea hole. So for pirates, the Fishman Island is also the ultimate way to the New World. Kami smiled and held out an index finger. So what does this have to do with the Sabaody Archipelago we're headed to? Nami asked. 10,000 meters directly below the Sabaody Archipelago is where the Fishman Island is. We can resupply at Sabaody, and then go to the Fishman Island, New Zealand. Xiaoba was a little unwilling to look directly at Nami, and said with a guilty conscience. It's not a guilty conscience, Xiaoba always has a sense of guilt when facing Nami. Once he followed Arlong and did some very bad things in Nami's hometown of Kokoyasi village. Xiao Hachi's nature is not bad. After being defeated, he changed his mind and wanted to make up for Nami. That's why, knowing that Sabaody Archipelago is dangerous to the Murlocs, he wants to take Luffy and the others to the island. 10,000 meters deep, the Sunny can't dive. Moreover, even a submarine can't go there with a water pressure of 10,000 meters. Frankie opened the mouth with some surprise. In front of the red line before, Luffy, Robin and Brook dived on the shark dive, trying to find a way to the Fishman Island. But it was useless. When the dive was about 5,000 meters, the shark diving was about to be crushed by the water pressure. A depth of 10,000 meters in the sea is an absolute forbidden zone for human life. Don't worry about this. After going to Sabaody, you can coat the boat. After coating, any boat can dive. Go to the Fishman Island, New Zealand. Xiaoba hurriedly said, I just know a very good film coater, so you don't have to worry about that. Then I will trouble you, Xiaoba. Luffy said with a smile. His observation Haki can sense emotions. He can feel the guilt in Xiaoba's heart now, as well as many complicated emotions. However, he didn't say much. In this regard, only if Nami chooses to forgive, it may be useful to Xiaoba. Luffy is not an idiot, he just doesn't think so much, but does things according to instinct and intuition. In fact, his emotional intelligence, in a sense, is very high. Next, I don't know what Nami and Hachi said. I only saw Xiaoba's face. The feeling of embarrassment facing Nami disappeared a lot, and there was more excitement and a happy smile on his face. This is the best way. Luffy sat on the bow, smiled, and thought to himself. After obtaining observation Haki, his emotional perception became more acute, and each partner carried more or less dark past. Some have been relieved, while others are still pressed in the bottom of my heart. Nami falls between the two. Although she was rescued at the most desperate time, the pain is still there. The appearance of Xiaoba and Nami's forgiveness allowed the wound to heal further. Everyone, look, that's Sabaody's place. Kami suddenly spoke loudly excitedly, pointing forward. Everyone looked forward, with involuntary smiles on their faces. Oh hoo, awesome, this Sabaody land, haha. Luffy said with a loud laugh. There is a dreamlike island in front of you, and the whole island seems to be enveloped in a huge bubble. The warm sunshine shines on the colorful bubbles, and the whole island is filled with colorful dreamy brilliance. Even Luffy, who has already experienced many fantasy islands, couldn't help being amazed by Sabaody at this moment. So beautiful. Nami covered her mouth in surprise. Girls always have no resistance to such beautiful things. Sabaody, as recorded in the book, is really a dream island. Robin closed the book in his hand, with a slight smile on his face, looking at the Sabaody tunnel in the distance. I wonder if there will be any special ingredients on this dreamy island. Sanji lit a cigarette and exhaled the smoke lightly. Ah, I'm so sleepy. I don't know if there is any good wine. Zoro yawned. A moment later, under the leadership of Xiaoba, the boat slowly sailed into a current port in Sabaody Archipelago. Sabaody Archipelago is composed of 79 mangrove trees connected by bridges, so there are rivers for boats to sail everywhere in Sabaody Archipelago. The whole of Sabaody, number 1 to number 30, is an unlawful area. The coder we are looking for is number 13 in the unlawful area. Among them, number 60 to number 60 is absolutely not allowed to go, because it's where Marine is stationed. Because Sabaody land is close to Naval Headquarters Marineford, the Marine garrison on Sabaody land is very strong. The Sunny was sailing in the river, and Hachi introduced the Sabaody Archipelago to Luffy through the numbers of the mangroves. We are now at number 40 to number 49, which is also a famous sightseeing street in Sabaody, and number 30 to number 39 next to it is Sabaody's playground. Sightseeing street, playground. Nami's and Luffy's eyes lit up at the same time. One eye is filled with the desire to shop, the other to play. There are more people in the latter. Usopp, Chopper, including Kami's eyes, are also full of yearning. The playground of Sabaody Archipelago is my childhood dream. With extremely complicated emotions on her face, Kami looked at the red trees in the distance and said. Chapter 10 Shaki's Bar. Advertise here. A playground is a dream. Nami instinctively noticed something was wrong. But was fooled by Xiaoba. Robin on the side showed a thoughtful expression. And the smile on Luffy's face also subsided slightly. It seems that this island is not as dreamy as it looks on the surface. Luffy thought to himself. If it was before, his rough nerves would not have noticed such a subtle difference. But his sense of knowledge is too strong, completely passive release, he clearly felt the longing in Kami's heart. But more of it is sentimentality and fear. As for Xiaoba, guilt and fear also occupy him. This dreamy island, which scares both Hachi and Kami, already says a lot. Although the contact time was very short, both Xiaoba and Kami were regarded as partners by Luffy, so he subconsciously paid attention to this matter. There is also a lot less playfulness in my heart. By the way, Xiaoba, you just said that the coder is in the mangrove area on the 13th. Luffy asked, is there a place to park the boat in the 13th area? Of course. Although Xiaoba was puzzled by Luffy's question, he answered honestly, in the entire Sabaody Archipelago, there are hidden ports for boats around every red tree. Then, let's park the Sunny in the 13th area first. We can arrange the coding right away, or we can go sightseeing on Sabaody together. Luffy smiled and said, it would be too unfair to keep people guarding the boat on this island. By the way, Xiaoba, can the coder you are looking for help guard the boat? Of course, Uncle Rayleigh is strong. Xiaoba said firmly. Rayleigh. Robin on the side frowned subconsciously. This name sounds familiar. However, you don't have to be in such a hurry. You can stop the boat here first, and there is no big problem. This is not a lawless area, new. No, let's go to Red Tree number 13 first. Luffy smiled, but his tone was very firm. The other crew members obviously noticed that something was wrong with Luffy. If it was normal, the carefree Luffy would have rushed off the boat and headed to the island to play. Luffy has really changed. Robin, who had heard about the history of Sabaody, seemed to know the reason for Luffy's decision, looked at Luffy in surprise, and thought to himself. But it's clearly a good change. When it's time to be cautious, you should be more cautious. This is very important for Robin, who has been hiding from Xiaodong and has seen the horror of this world. I see, new. Xiaoba continued to lead the way ahead, parked the boat at a hidden port in the mangrove tree number 13, and got off the boat. But to be on the safe side, Zoro and Frankie temporarily stayed on the deck to guard the ship. After all, this is a lawless area. Zoro is sleeping on the deck, while Frankie is taking advantage of this time to repair and maintain the Sunny. After you find Uncle Rayleigh and Miss Shaki, you can all disembark and play. They will help keep an eye on the Sunny. Xiao Ba walked ahead and said. Now he is wearing a huge coat outside, wrapping his forearms inside the coat. Kami, on the other hand, put on shoes on her feet and a long skirt that covered her tail fin. This series of cover-ups made Robin's eyes more serious. Not far from the port where the boat stops, there is a long step, and above the step is a small bar. And below the steps, several bloody pirates were thrust into the ground with their heads upside down. This place is a bit unusual. Is this the Lawless Zone? Usopp stood behind Luffy, teeth chattering. After walking up the steps, Chopper's eyes and tongue stared straight out. Shaki's ripped off bar. Something's wrong with the name. Don't worry, Miss Shaki is a very gentle person. Xiao Ba calmly pushed open the door of the bar and walked in. Excuse me, Miss Shaki. Ah, it's Xiao Ba, wait a moment, let me deal with these people. Inside the bar, a pretty-looking woman with a unique temperament was holding a cigarette in her mouth. She was grabbing a pirate by the collar. The pirate had completely lost consciousness with blood on his face. Around Shaki, several pirates fell to the ground completely. Yeah, Chopper looked at the scene in front of him, and let out a scream of horror. A moment later, outside the bar, on the ground under the long steps, there were a few more human signposts. In the tavern, after the lights were turned on, it was not so gloomy, but a normal, warm bar full of human touch. Miss Shaki, you are really strong, were you also a pirate before? Luffy looked at Miss Shaki and laughed. In observation Haki's perception, the aura of the bar owner is very strong, not much different from Shichibukai's level. With such strength, I am afraid that New World is also at the level of a big pirate. Being a barkeeper here in the first half of the New World is really curious. Ah, it was a long time ago, but you retired a long time ago. Speaking of which, little monkey, your surname is the same as the marine hero Garp. Shaki asked curiously. Ah, that's my grandfather. Luffy ate the food in the refrigerator, and said. No wonder, when I was a pirate, I was often chased and captured by Garp. Shaki laughed. Hey, it's not easy for Miss Shaki to be hunted down by Garp. Nami was a little surprised. They knew the identity of Grandpa Luffy and his status in Marine. He was a well-known big shot, well-known all over the world. A pirate who was hunted down by such a big man and was not caught in prison, it is conceivable that Miss Shaki is not simple. It was all 40 years ago, it's over, and now I'm just an ordinary bar owner. Shaki exhaled and flicked the cigarette in the ashtray. 40 years. Everyone was surprised. Judging by Shaki's appearance, he was about 30 years old at most. How old is Miss Shaki? Haha, the age of women is a secret. Shaki smiled softly. To some extent, her demeanor was as calm as Robin wanted to be, full of a gentle gesture. It's just that they don't seem to be as dark-bellied as Robin, and there are some essential differences in the calm and gentle temperament of the two. Robin's peace is brought about by knowledge, a scholar's peace and gentleness. And Shaki's tranquility is brought about by experience. Her mysterious and wonderful pirate past, as well as her strength, allow her to treat most things calmly. Chapter 11 Supernovas and Celestial Dragons. Advertise here. But Ms. Shaki obviously didn't want to say more, so Luffy and the others didn't go any further. Speaking of which, Shaki, where's Rayleigh? New. After chatting with Shaki for a while, Xiaoba remembered the purpose of this trip. I came here this time to bring my friends to ask him for help with coding. Rayleigh. Shaki lightly puffed out the smoke and said, I haven't been back for half a year, I don't know where I went. Maybe I found a new woman. But don't worry, he probably won't leave this island, you can just look for it on this island. Shaki laughed. By the way, you can also have fun on this island. Recently, it should be the most friendly time for pirates. Marine's defense force has dropped to its lowest point during this period. With your little monkey's strength, as long as you don't conflict with the celestial dragons, there shouldn't be a big problem. Marine's defense strength has decreased. Has something happened? Nami asked suspiciously. From what Xiaoba said before, Sabaody is very close to naval headquarters. Celestial dragons, what are those? Luffy also asked curiously. When Xiaoba was on the island, he seemed to have reminded them with a serious face. You guys are asking too fast, answer one by one. Shaki smiled gently and said, Marine seems to be shrinking its strength recently. I don't know the specific reason. It may be to fight a certain big pirate, or for some other purpose. Shaki wasn't very clear. Although she claims to be an intelligence officer, after all, she is no longer the captain of the 9 snake pirates, and there are far fewer intelligence channels than before. What's more, Marine hasn't leaked much news yet, and few people know about the news of Huaquan's arrest, let alone start a war. As for the celestial dragons, they are the most unprovoked objects on this island. You will know when you see them. Although they are a group of annoying people, they are the nobles of the world. If they are provoked, Marine Admiral will be dispatched. Quote. Admiral, Nami and Usopp all stared wide-eyed with horror on their faces. Admiral and the others only met once, and that was Aokiji. The despair that Aokiji gave to everyone is still lingering in their hearts. That kind of unparalleled oppressive force, so powerful that it makes people desperate. If it hadn't been for Aokiji's release of water, they would have been wiped out by the group long ago. And messing with the celestial dragons would cause Admiral to come out, which is a bit unacceptable. Of course, the objects of this fear are limited to Chopper, Nami and Usopp. Admiral, it's interesting, and that celestial dragons can make Miss Shaki name the people she hates. I really want to see them. Luffy laughed, with inexplicable excitement in his eyes. He really wants to fight Admiral again. His current strength is just his own speculation, because the improvement is too great, and he doesn't know how far he is from the world's top combat power. It can only be compared with the bears who have played against each other before. However, neither the bear nor the Aokiji in memory did their best. In comparison, it is difficult to define. Little monkey, you are really different, I kind of admire you. Shaki could naturally see that there was no fear in Luffy's eyes, even when facing Admiral and Celestial Dragons. No, I don't want to continue to face Aokiji. Chopper and Usopp said loudly. By the way, Miss Shaki, Celestial Dragons, why do they have such great power? Sanji lit a cigarette and asked. What he asked was also what all the members of the Straw Hat Pirates present wanted to ask, except Robin, who already knew. Knew, because they are the nobles of the world. According to legend, they inherited the blood of the creator, and the world government was established by their ancestors. Xiao Ba couldn't hide the fear in his eyes and said. So, if the celestial dragons are damaged, the world government will spare no effort to mobilize. If it's somewhere else, this is Sabaody, and Admiral will arrive as quickly as possible. So, no matter what, Luffy, don't mess with the celestial dragons, understand? Ah, I see, Xiao Ba. Luffy tucked his nose, his eyes had drifted to the other side. You definitely want to mess with the celestial dragons. Xiao Ba, looking at Luffy's expression, Kami felt extremely uneasy. Ha ha ha, maybe we won't meet. Don't worry. Luffy laughed indifferently and said, as long as you don't mess with my partner, no matter how annoying I am, I won't make a move, right? Is it a question sentence? Kami's tongue and eyeballs were about to protrude. After a short chat, Luffy and the others also got up and said, then please Miss Shaki, please take care of the Sunny. Leave it to me, little monkey, you can rest assured to have a good time on the island. Shaki smiled with a lady's cigarette in his hand. Then please. Luffy smiled and waved. By the way, wait a minute, little monkey, take this, it should be of some help to you. Shaki suddenly thought of something, took out a newspaper and a stack of reward orders from the drawer under the bar, and handed them to Luffy. This is. Luffy was a little puzzled. This is the supernova gathered on Sabaody at this moment, and you are one of them, take it and have a look. Shaki let out a puff of smoke lightly. Ah, thank you very much. Luffy handed the newspaper to Nami without paying attention. Watch the back of the Straw Hat crew leaving. Shaki's eyes were dark. It seems that Sabaody's place is going to be messed up again. Luffy and the others first went to the Sunny, and brought down Zoro and Frankie, who were staying on board. With Shaki's guarantee, nothing will happen to the Sunny. Shaki's strength, unless it is a bear or admiral, otherwise, these novice pirates in the first half of the Grand Line on the Sabaody Archipelago are too far behind. This time Luffy did not choose to play separately. Sabaody is not safe, it is too close to naval headquarters, and because of the celestial dragons mentioned earlier. It is very likely that Admiral will come. Sanji and Zoro have not fully improved their strength, so it is better to be in a similar area together. In this way, in the face of any emergency, there is room for resistance. Supernova 11 gathered in Sabaody. A group of people are walking on the forest path in Sabaody. Nami was flipping through the newspaper Shaki had given them. That's the big headline in the newspaper. Chapter 12 Kid, Apu, First Meeting. Advertise here. The so-called supernova refers to a super rookie pirate who has developed in a short period of time and has a bounty of more than 100 million. If you calculate the time, these people may spend about the same amount of time at sea as Luffy, but their bounty has already exceeded 100 million berry. Nami said in surprise. Among them, Luffy and Zoro are one of them. What? That is to say, there are still 9 pirates like Luffy and Zoro on this island. Chopper exclaimed in surprise. They have gone through a series of bizarre adventures, defeated 2 Shichibukai, broke into the Eni's lobby, and made an open enemy of the world government. Even so, there are only 2 supernovas in the entire pirate group. It's hard to imagine that there are still 9 such characters. Ah, 9. Nami looked at the newspaper and said, but according to the newspaper, under normal circumstances, there will not be so many supernovae gathered on the ground of Sabaody, and there are at most 2 or 3 on weekdays. Like the 11 this time, it is already an extremely rare phenomenon. These bounties are the bounties collected by Ms. Shaki about the other 9 supernovas. Nami put down the newspaper and picked up the reward list in his hand. After everyone saw it, they were shocked again. Supernova 11. Zoro actually ranks second to last among them. Usopp put down the reward list in his hand, a little shocked. The strength of Zoro is obvious to all, and the things they have done are absolutely daring. As a result, the reward ranking is not enough. Oh, interesting, countdown. Zoro held a wine bottle in his hand and took a sip of the wine with a sharp smile on his face. Even he couldn't help but feel a little competitive in his heart. Although he didn't think that the bounty can represent strength, the bounty ranked second to last among the supernovas. It still made him a little upset. 315 million, someone has a higher bounty than Luffy. Chopper was also shocked. Where is there? Luffy smiled and moved his head closer. Eustace Kid, amazing, the bounty is so high, I think I've seen it. No, this man looks very cruel. Usopp covered his head. Compared with Luffy, Kid's reward list is completely 2 styles. One looks like an idiot, and the other looks like a strongman with blood on his hands. However, the supernova bounty was quickly forgotten by Luffy and the others. Sabaody's interesting bubble culture attracts everyone who comes to Sabaody for the first time. In addition, because it is close to naval headquarters, in addition to the unreachable area, the safety of other places such as sightseeing streets, shopping streets, and playgrounds is guaranteed. And because Sabaody is the last island in the first half of the Grand Line. A large number of nobles and businessmen who do business between the 2 places are waiting for Mariajoy's approval on the land of Sabaody. Therefore, the tourism culture and business on the Sabaody archipelago are extremely prosperous. Soon, Luffy and the others were completely attracted by the goods everywhere. At the same time, Sabaody number 1 mangrove area. In the slave prison behind the population auction. An old man with silver hair gently raised the exquisite silver jug in his hand, shook it slightly and said. On this island, it seems that a few powerful people have come. When this marine shrinks its strength, it seems that the sea is about to calm down again. What are you talking about, old man? Beside Rayleigh, a huge giant, with his eyes slightly slanted down to look at the old man sitting beside him, spoke. No, nothing, it's just a bit of whining from a retired old man. Rayleigh raised the jug, drank the wine in the jug, and said with a smile. The wine is almost gone, it's time to go out. ... What is this? Sabaody Commercial Street. A red light flashed in Luffy's eyes. Then, like a prophet, he tilted his body slightly to the side. Next second, boom, a huge explosion sounded. The wall of the nearby bar exploded instantly, and a huge stone flew past Luffy's face, and Luffy's eyes did not fluctuate in the slightest. If he hadn't turned sideways just now, the stone that flew out due to the explosion was headed towards his head. And in the thick smoke of the explosion, whoosh, a figure somersaulted through the air, past Luffy, and stood behind him. Pirate, it's obviously not brought here helplessly. Luffy tilted his head, a little puzzled. You are really annoying. I have decided to kill you here. The smoke and dust dissipated, and a man with the head of a scarlet hedgehog walked out from the broken bar wall. The man was tall and muscular, and his facial features looked very ferocious. With a pair of sunglasses on his head, it looks like a menacing oppression. As he was walking at the moment, he pulled out a dagger from his chest with his hand, exuding a bloody smell. He was facing Luffy's direction at the moment, but those words were obviously not addressed to Luffy, but to the people behind Luffy. I don't like you too, come if you can, kid. Apu waved his long arms and said with a smile. By the way, kid, I remembered. Luffy stood between the 2 of them, clapped his arms, and suddenly remembered who the man with the scarlet hedgehog head was in front of him. Eustace Kid. The bounty offered is around 300 million, anyway, it is a supernova who is higher than him. Because Chopper said that the bounty was higher than him, so he specifically looked at the bounty list about Kid in Chopper's hand. Only then did I have a certain impression. Who is this idiot standing in the middle? It looks familiar. Kid frowned and looked at Luffy standing between him and Apu. Although there is no observation Haki, the intuition after countless battles made him feel a very obvious sense of danger from Luffy. This terrifying sense of danger, like a flood, impacted his keen fighting instinct. This is not a simple character. Captain Kid, the younger brother next to Kid, when he saw Luffy, suddenly showed a terrified expression, stepped forward quickly, took out a reward list and said to Kid. This is a supernova with a bounty of 300 million, Straw Hat Luffy. Among the supernova 11 gathered in Sabaody Archipelago this time, he is the most vicious pirate after the captain. Oh, interesting. A cruel smile appeared on Kid's face. The bounty is close to me. This looks more interesting and annoying than that annoying guy Apu. After the voice fell, the dagger in Kid's hand floated into the air, and then broke through the air like a bullet, hitting Luffy. Chapter 13 One Punch, Instant Kill, Huge Gap. Advertise here. The dagger levitates and shoots out, faster than bullets. However, Luffy just tilted his head slightly, and the dagger passed directly by his ear. It's just that after the dagger passed by, it turned around from the back of Luffy's head at an extremely fast speed, and stabbed towards Luffy's back. What an interesting ability. Are you demon fruit power too? With a big smile on his face, Luffy looked at Kid with interest. He just turned his body slightly a few times, and the levitating knife, which was faster than the speed of the bullet, circled around Luffy's body, like juggling, unable to touch his body at all. During this process, Luffy's face was relaxed, and his eyes never left the kid in front of him, as if he was taking a good look at the kid's abilities. Compared with Luffy's relaxed look, Kid's complexion is getting uglier. Why can't I hit it all the time? It's obvious that his gaze wasn't on the dagger at all. Kid was full of doubts, and his face was gloomy. The dagger he manipulated, and many attacks, were all attacks from the blind spot of people's vision, coupled with the speed of manipulating the metal flight. Even so, he was easily dodged. The Straw Hat Kid. Is his ability related to evasion? This doesn't match the rumors. Behind Luffy, Apu looked at Luffy's easily dodging back and asked in doubt. He had a short fight with Kid, and he was very aware of the strength of the opponent, and his attack was not so easy to dodge. The one in charge of the Straw Hat is indeed a great pirate with a bounty of 300 million. On a wooden barrel outside the bar, with a long knife resting on his shoulder, the man in the hat watched the battle not far away. His voice was low and magnetic. Boom. From the other side of the street, a huge explosion sounded, followed by huge smoke rising up. A monk holding a huge pencil and wings on his back rushed out of the smoke and dust. His huge body brought terrifying impact and pressure. And the target of his charge was a man wearing a mask who deftly flipped and unloaded in the air. It's the strange monk Yoroj. The onlookers in Sabaody said in surprise. Fighting against him is the killing samurai, Kira. Scythe. What an interesting weapon. On the sightseeing street, not far behind Luffy, Zoro looked up to Kira with an interested smile on his face. Swordsmen who use sickles are also very rare among swordsmen. He couldn't help but feel happy to see the hunter. It's just that some are too weak. These supernovas are really one by one, lawless guys, it's too troublesome. Sanji lightly lit a cigarette, exhaled a mouthful of smoke, and commented. Obviously this is not an unlawful area, but it started to fight as soon as it was said, and there was such a big commotion. One by one, what a bunch of rambunctious guys, a bunch of bastards without manners. In the dining room that has been pierced through a wall on the side. Capone Beige wiped his mouth lightly, watching the battle outside with a look of impatience. Where's the pizza? Food, come here. A young woman with long pink hair and heart-shaped lipstick was sitting on the dining table, stomping on the table vigorously, eating in a horrible and vulgar way. She was not attracted by the battle outside at all, only the food in front of her eyes. The other side. The bloodthirsty expression in Kid's eyes became more and more intense. I want to see if you can only dodge like a monkey. With a bloodthirsty and cruel smile on Kid's face, he stretched out his right hand vigorously towards the sky. Magnetic force. An invisible force spread around. Everyone present with weapons instantly sensed that something was wrong. Zoro, who was watching the play, yawned, and then looked at the three famous knives swaying at his waist due to some force. The power to manipulate metal. It's just this level. It's still far from being able to manipulate my knife. Concentrating the invisible spirit in his hand, Armament Haki lightly pressed on the handle of the knife. In an instant, the shaking famous sword calmed down. Hey, Luffy, hurry up and settle the battle. If you don't make a move, I will. Zoro said a little bored. I still need to purchase ingredients, so don't waste too much time. Sanji said calmly with a cigarette in his hand. Quickly resolve the battle. It's been a long time since I heard such words. Kid laughed angrily. In his hand, there are more than 100 swords floating in the air densely, like a forest of steel. Such a scene caused all the people watching the battle to flee immediately, for fear of being affected by this kind of attack. Captain Hawkins, hide quickly, we seem to be within the attack range. Not far from Luo, a blond man sitting on a wooden barrel was placing divination cards one by one in the air in front of him. Fate has given a warning, the chance of being hit is only 1%. The Straw Hat Boy's odds are 100%. When the result of this divination came out, even Hawkins couldn't help being surprised. And at this time, in front of him, Kid was already laughing and making a shot. Can you escape this time? Straw Hat Boy. Kid shot hard. Magnetic force, pointed gun. Like a laser burst, countless metal weapons shot out, bursting at a speed faster than bullets. Overwhelming, like a long forest of steel falling from the sky. Cover all hiding places visible to the naked eye. So slow. The playful smile on Luffy's face disappeared, and his expression became calm and serious in an instant. He pressed his hat lightly, and his figure disappeared in an instant. It was as if an invisible storm was rushing past in the sky, and the countless metal weapons that were blasted in the air were smashed to pieces in an instant. Luffy's figure appeared behind Kid in an instant. Boom. Heavy fist hit. It was as if a dull air wave passed over the faces of everyone present. Boom. Kid's body was instantly smashed to the ground. It was as if time stood still for a moment. The next moment, a hemispherical deep pit appeared on the ground under Kid's body. Immediately afterwards, thick smoke and dust swept around with the shock wave. Stepstone. Luffy pressed down on his hat and landed with a relaxed smile on his face. Behind him, Countless metal weapons fell like fallen leaves. And Kid, lying in the deep pit behind Luffy at this moment, has completely lost consciousness. Captain Kid him. Kid's younger brother froze in place, with a look of disbelief on his face, trembling and wanting to go to Kid's side, but looking at Luffy, he didn't dare to move at all. Captain Kid, he was instantly killed. Shouts of exclamation resounded throughout the commercial plaza. Chapter 14 Zoro makes a move, another instant kill. Advertise here. A deathly silence enveloped the commercial square. At this moment, everyone present, except Straw Hat Crew. Everyone else fell into dead silence. There was a look of disbelief on everyone's face. Eustace Kid was killed in seconds. No one doubts Kid's strength. Although the supernovas all believe that the bounty cannot represent combat power. But Kid is the first person to offer bounties for supernovas, and his combat power is unquestionable. He is one of the top few supernovas. Such a character, against the Straw Hat Boy who offered the second highest bounty. Everyone thought that this would be a close battle, or a short trial. The short-term result was very short-lived, but the result exceeded everyone's expectations. Kid never hit the Straw Hat Boy from the beginning to the end, and the Straw Hat Kid, with just one punch, instantly killed Kid who had the first bounty. Really, the Straw Hat Master is actually so strong. Luo's calm smile disappeared, replaced by a look of shock. Straw Hat Boy, did such a monster appear again in the pirates? On the roof not far away, Chichi-Drake's eyes seemed to be clouded, and he looked at Luffy with extreme fear. Hey, are you kidding? That speed and power, is this really the pirate from the first half of the Grand Line? The strange monk Uroge in the distance is carrying a huge pencil and has completely forgotten about the fight with Kira. This terrifying speed made it impossible for people to catch such a destructive punch. Even with his physique, he didn't have the confidence to resist the next punch. Supernova Kid was killed by the Straw Hat in one punch. That's really big news. In the dark alley, a reporter was pressing the shutter on Luffy. In the photo, Luffy is pressing the Straw Hat with a relaxed face. Behind him, Kid is lying in the deep pit, his eyes rolled white, and he has completely lost consciousness. And not far away, Hawkins, Luo, and Capone Beige were all in the mirror, but their faces were full of shocked smiles. News headlines and reporters have already thought about it. There is also a gap in the supernova, and a new emperor among the pirates is born. Although a bit exaggerated, but news. In order to attract people's attention, it is not shabby to exaggerate. Solved. Let's go. Luffy lifted the straw hat lightly, walked towards Zoro and the others not far away, and smiled while showing white fang. He didn't even look at the unconscious Kid behind him. Supernova is too weak for his current level. If it weren't for the fact that Kid's ability is very interesting, the opponent should have fallen when Kid attacked him for the first time. Are you kidding? Kid, stand up for me. There was an unbelievable roar in the distance. Kira, who confronted Uroge before, seems to have just recovered now. Looking at the Kid who fell behind Luffy, his voice was full of anger. He didn't believe that the man he followed was only at this level. It's too shameful to be eliminated by the Straw Hat Boy who is also a supernova and has a lower bounty. Whoosh. Kira kicked her feet hard. Like a sharp arrow, almost instantly, it crossed a distance of 100 meters and came to Luffy's side. Under the sunlight, the sickle in his hand gave off a dazzling cold light, and chopped towards Luffy's neck. And Luffy, it's like he didn't see it at all. Clang. There was a faint sound of the blade being unsheathed. In an instant, everyone present felt the terrifying murderous aura that was almost viscous, like the Shira of the abyss. One knife flow, draw the knife, sleepless at night. A deep voice sounded, a sword light that was so fast that the naked eye could not catch it appeared instantly from the oblique ground. All eyes saw only a flash of bright light. Then Zoro suddenly appeared behind Kira, and gently inserted the third-generation ghost in his hand into the scabbard at his waist. And behind him, the sickle in Kira's hand broke, and a huge wound appeared on his chest, extending directly from his shoulder to his waist. Blood splattered, the mask cracked, Kira spit out a mouthful of blood, fell from the air, and hit the ground. At this level, if you attack our captain so simply, it would be too shameful for us. Zoro pressed his palms on the three famous knives at his waist, and said in a low and calm voice. So cool. Beautiful. Zoro. Usopp and Chopper shouted loudly from the side, stars almost appeared in their eyes. When Kid came out just now, it still made Chopper Usopp feel uneasy. After all, this is the pirate whose bounty exceeds that of Luffy. Immediately, they saw the strength of Luffy and Zoro after their evolution. It's really scary, it's not the same as before. With one punch and one knife, he instantly killed two supernovas whose bounties were higher than his own. Is this the improved strength? Nami covered her mouth in surprise. It's really reliable. Robin smiled softly. Under normal circumstances, Luffy and Zoro are very strong, and it is impossible to instantly kill these two supernovas. The pirates with similar bounties usually have relatively similar strengths, especially pirates like Supernova. The only reason is that after the improvement of Luffy's mysterious ability, everyone has really changed completely. Originally, pirates of the same level could not even pass a move in front of them. Is it really possible to reach the admiral level of combat power? Robin had some expectations in his heart. Although after Annie's lobby, she completely understood her intention to join the Straw Hats. But she was still worried because she knew exactly what she stood for. If the world government goes all out, it is impossible for the current Straw Hat Pirates to be able to resist at all. And if it can reach the Admiral level of combat power, it will be completely different. Admiral is the world government, the highest combat power in this sea. Even the world government cannot underestimate the Admiral level combat power. Now, the entire commercial street square was completely frozen. Instacle, another instacle. After Straw Hat killed Kid in a second, Roronoa killed Kira in a second with a higher bounty than him. Is this really the second in command? That kind of terror and oppression. Beads of sweat dripped down Yoroja's face. Although Zoro only slashed once, and the speed was very fast, the murderous aura and oppressive force at the moment of slashing were still suppressed in everyone's heart. You know, now Zoro, Conqueror's Haki and swordsmanship have been fully evolved. The path he walked was the path of Shira, with a murderous aura that was terrifying. That's it, he didn't make a shot with all his strength, if he shot with all his strength. One by one, everyone present will be directly intimidated by his murderous aura. Chapter 15 World Nobility, Celestial Dragons. Advertise here. The Straw Hat Pirates, are they all monsters? Capone Bedge's eyes were full of fear, no longer the indifference just now. Originally, he thought that these supernovas were not much different from his strength. And the fact is indeed the case, neither Kid, nor Yoroge, Kira behind, gave him a very strong sense of danger. But the shots of the two Straw Hat boys made him break out in a cold sweat, none of which he could resist. As the boat finished, Capone Bedge couldn't help asking. To be honest, this island already made him feel very dangerous. Godfather, the fastest coating also takes 3 days. We have only been on the island for 2 days. The younger brother in a black suit and sunglasses next to him spoke. It's really unlucky. I'm on an island with such a lawless monster. I have a hunch that if I don't leave this island as soon as possible, something bad may happen. It's not just Capone Bedge who has this hunch. This was the thought that came to mind when everyone at the scene saw the monster like Luffy and Zoro. The supernova who wanted to continue to make trouble. These lawless pirates are all ready to sing silently at this moment. It has to be said that the horror and oppression brought by the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates really made this group of supernovas who have not been out to sea for a long time feel a sense of frustration. You are so strong, dear Luffy. Luffy and Nami meet them. Kami said with a look of admiration. No, it's just that they are too weak. Luffy scratched his head in embarrassment and laughed. Let's go, the next time we meet, we will be in New World. With a serious expression on his face, Luo stood up from the barrel. On the side, Hawkins said with a serious face. The next fate is a big disaster. The probability of an event that threatens my life is 95%. Such a high probability. Run away, Captain Hawkins. The younger brother on the side said a little scared. Hawkins' divination is very accurate. But this time, such a high probability can already explain the danger in the future. It's too late. This is fate. Fate is absolutely accurate and cannot be changed. Hawkins' tone remained calm. Something that could threaten the life of a supernova. What would it be? Luo's heart skipped a beat. But at this moment, the people on the commercial street in the distance are actually kneeling down in rows at this moment. The commotion spread here in an instant. The celestial dragons are coming. A sound of panic spread from a distance, like a huge wave. Celestial dragons. What a nuisance, avoid them. Capone Bedge, smoking a cigar, got up and walked towards the dark alley. And Apu leapt vigorously, and came to the roof, behind a hidden chimney. Even Kid's younger brother overcame his fear of the Straw Hat at this moment, and hurried forward, dragged the unconscious Kid and Kira down, and hid them in the buildings on both sides. What are they doing? Luffy looked around suspiciously. There were still a lot of people in the commercial street, but at this moment, people all moved out of the way, separated from both sides, and fell to their knees. Those supernova pirates are all hiding in the dark at the moment. Celestial dragons. Although he was told that provoking celestial dragons would attract Admiral, to be honest, Luffy still didn't take it very seriously. On the one hand, it's because of Luffy's innate lack of respect for nobles. On the other hand, because his own strength has been greatly improved now, he also wants to really fight against the Admiral level to prove his own strength. This is not only him, but also Zoro beside him. So Luffy and Zoro were standing right in the middle of the road while the other supernovas were evacuating at breakneck speed. At this moment, the celestial dragons have appeared in the field of vision. Those two guys, shouldn't they? Luo, who had been hiding in the dark, looked at the puzzled Luffy and Zoro in the middle of the road, and they had no intention of avoiding them. Suddenly thought of a very bad possibility. He and Hawkins not far away looked at each other, and he saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. The Straw Hat Pirates are a lawless existence, not to mention the strength and character of these two people. What happened, Zoro? Luffy tilted his head, looking at the kneeling people around him with a dazed expression. I don't know. Zoro yawned, still holding a bottle of wine in his hand. Zoro hadn't heard anything about the celestial dragons when he was still on the boat when he was at Shaki's bar, so now he's just as dazed as the forgotten Luffy. Celestial dragons have come not far. This is a fat man with a plump face, curly black hair, thick lips, and a nose with snot all the time, giving people a sincere sense of disgust. However, None of the people present at the moment dared to show it. Everyone lowered their heads in fear, not daring to look up. Since this is the Celestial Dragons, and it's the Celestial Dragons on the Sabaody Archipelago, Marine Admiral will come if something goes wrong. Come on, Celestial Dragons. Don't look my way, please. All the kneeling people were uneasy, and the sound of the slaves of the Celestial Dragons crawling made their hearts tense completely. It's like this every time you meet Celestial Dragons, moody and powerful Celestial Dragons, even if they kill everyone present, there is no problem. However, when everyone lowered their heads and prayed. On the quiet street, a voice was very obvious. Ha ha ha, Zoro, look at that man, he's dressed so strangely, and put soap bubbles on his head, interesting, haha. Luffy stood in the middle of the road, pointing at the Celestial Dragons and laughing. The bloated clothes, the soap bubbles on his head, and the mentally handicapped Charles Rose himself really felt a sense of joy. It's really interesting, maybe it's a feature of Sabaody. Zoro took a sip of wine and said, something like an acrobat. Or an Oran parading the streets. Those two idiots. In the shadow of the alley, Nami couldn't help but look angry at the two people who were commenting on Celestial Dragons in the middle of the street. Ruined. Usopp and Chopper had horror on their faces. They know all too well the characters of their own captain and those two idiots Zoro, and with these two standing here, the end of the Celestial Dragons is sealed. Admirals going to this island is probably a foregone conclusion. And on the surrounding ground, it was already deathly silent. The people kneeling on the ground had cold sweat dripping down their faces. How many years has it been since someone dared to be so disrespectful to Celestial Dragons on the street? Chapter 16 Beating the Celestial Dragons. Advertise here. Idiot. Idiots also have a limit. Not to mention these kneeling civilians, even those supernovas hiding in the dark are sweating coldly at this moment. Jewelry Bernie looked at everything in front of him. Standing in the middle of the street is a challenge to Celestial Dragons. With Celestial Dragons' domineering attitude, conflicts are inevitable. And once there is a conflict, with the strength and lawless character shown by the two Straw Hats, Celestial Dragons will definitely fall here. The Celestial Dragons are attacked, and the Sabaody Archipelago cannot stay. Hey, the Straw Hat Pirates probably don't even have this common sense. Apu hid behind a chimney, looked down and said, are you guys provoking me? The voices of Luffy and Zoro were neither loud nor soft, and they were very clear in this quiet street. Charles Rose, who was sitting on the slave, had a very ugly face in the soap bubbles. These two bastard civilians actually compared him to a juggler and an Oran. This is an insult to them who have inherited the blood of the Supreme Creator. Saying that, St. Charles Rose had already raised the golden pistol in his hand, and the bullet was aimed at Luffy's head. Seeing this, Luffy's smile instantly calmed down, and his eyes were sharp and frightening. When you raised your gun, did you make up your mind? Luffy lowered his head slightly, eyes piercing. Just like when Shanks was held up by the Bandit King with a gun. In fact, he has long been upset with this person in front of him. In the knowledgeable perception, the people around have indescribable fear, resentment, anger, and many more things towards the man in front of him. Including the abyss-like fear of Kami, Xiao Ba, and Papagu behind him. All this ignited when the Celestial Dragons in front of him raised their pistols at him. Go to hell, bastard. A cruel smile appeared on St. Charles Rose's face. Then he pulled the trigger in his hand. Boom. Bullets fired. And Luffy just walked towards Charo slowly, turned his head slightly, and the bullets flew by. No way, Straw Hat. Jewelry Pawnee's heart has been raised. Bang bang bang. 3 more shots, and 3 shots past Luffy's ear. 3 shots later, Luffy has walked in front of the Celestial Dragons. Facing Luffy's sharp eyes, Sacred Charlos felt fear in his heart, and then this fear turned into anger in an instant. It was as if the superior had been provoked to be majestic. Get rid of him quickly. Street. Charles Rose shouted. Behind him, there were several men in black suits. Yes, Lord Charles Rose. Just as the men in black suits were about to step forward, a terrifying aura passed over them. In an instant, several people all fell to the ground with white eyes. Not far away, Zoro took a sip of wine, glanced at this side from the corner of his eye, and said calmly. Although he usually beats Luffy as he should, but outside, he is very good at protecting Luffy's face. When Luffy faces off against Charles Rose, he won't let anyone bother his captain. Let me ask you, when you raised your gun, did you make up your mind? Luffy stared directly at Charles Rose in front of him. The so-called Celestial Dragons in front of him are the worst emotions he has ever felt since he awakened the color of knowledge. This indescribable fear and resentment all around, is also the worst. You bastard, I'm Celestial Dragons, if you dare to look at me, kneel down. At this moment, Charlos was still in a superior posture, the pistol in his hand was out of bullets, and he slammed towards Luffy forcefully. Luffy just dodged lightly, and the pistol brushed past. Then he raised his fist. That guy. Capone Beige broke out in a cold sweat. In Luo's eyes, there was nervousness and anticipation. No way. Apu stood on the roof and said in a daze. Boom. A punch went straight through the soap bubble. Fly to the sky for me. Luffy can feel the touch of the fist against his face. He just hit it hard. The next moment, a ring of white air waves spread around his fist. It seems that there is a white line directly running through the entire commercial street, and around the white line, there are a large number of white circular air waves spreading. A punch hit a sonic boom. And without second gear on, that's Luffy's power right now. Ah, this kind of bastard feels much more comfortable after being beaten into the air. Luffy withdrew his fist, pressed on the straw hat above his head, and said with a big smile. It's so weak, but it looks like it's not an acrobat. Zoro tilted his head, puzzled. He has no ability to perceive emotions. Seeing the appearance of celestial dragons and the behavior of the surrounding people, he thought it was a special feature of Sabaody land when he saw the god-tier experience. But it doesn't matter, such a weak existence. Zoro yawned while holding the wine bottle. The sunshine in Sabaody's land was so good that he wanted to find a place to sleep. What's wrong? Why is it so quiet all of a sudden? Luffy asked with some doubts. At this moment, around them, all the kneeling civilians raised their heads and looked at him in shock. Not only these civilians, but the supernovas in the distance are completely speechless. Celestial dragons were beaten. After the deathly silence, came the boiling human voice. Run away. I don't know who yelled. The surrounding civilians quickly stood up and ran away one by one. In a short time, only Luffy and some supernovas were left in the bustling commercial street. I'm finally free, you are pirates, run away. Just when Luffy Zoro was still a little confused, a weak voice spoke beside them. It was the slave man who had been ridden by the celestial dragons as a mount. The man was tall, but bony, with welts all over his body, and blood was still dripping on his face. Are you okay? Your injury looks serious. Luffy looked at the man in front of him and asked. It's okay, because I'm going to die soon, but death is also a relief. The man was very calm, no longer kneeling forward, but sitting on the ground in a relaxed manner. Compared to this, you should run away. If you fight the celestial dragons, Admiral will come to this island soon. By then, you won't be able to escape. Celestial dragons, Admiral, by the way, it seems that Ms. Shaki said it, but it doesn't matter. Why are you talking about dying? We have the best doctors, don't worry, you won't die with your injuries. Luffy laughed. The slave man looked at Luffy and was taken aback for a moment. You really don't look like other pirates. But it's useless. This collar is about to explode. Without the key, it cannot be removed. Chapter 17 Legendary Characters. Advertise here. Ding dong, ding dong. The sound like a countdown began to sound in this empty commercial street square. What sound? Luffy looked around suspiciously. This is the collar that prevents the slave from escaping. Once the slave exceeds a certain range of the master for too long, the collar will explode. New. Xiao Ba came forward and said with an ugly face. When he was in the Sun Pirates, he saved many slaves and saw many slave collars like this. I have finally come to this point. Unexpectedly, there is still no chance to return to my hometown in the end. There was unwillingness in the eyes of the slave man, but more relief. Ever since he was captured by human traffickers and made a slave to the celestial dragons, he should have known this was the end. It was just the hope that remained in his heart, the hope of returning to his hometown, that made him persevere until now. The wife and children in my hometown were not able to see each other for the last time in the end. Ding dong, the sound trigger frequency of the slave collar is getting higher and higher, like the countdown of life, which is approaching the end. Leave it to me, Mr. Straw Hat. Luo walked out of the dark alley and drew out the long knife in his hand. Using my ability, I can remove this collar without damage, just use this knife. Boom. A huge explosion sounded on the commercial street, directly interrupting Luo's words. Luo froze in place. He only saw Luffy put his hands on the slave man's bomb collar, and then, as if tearing it off violently, he swung it aside and easily took off the collar. However, if it is taken off violently, the collar should explode immediately. What were you talking about? The collar exploded. Luffy turned to look at the stunned Luo, and asked with some doubts. He was trying his best to manipulate armament Haki to remove the collar just now, and he really didn't hear what the man was saying. Moreover, he didn't seem to know the man holding the long knife in front of him. How did you do it? Luo looked at Luffy in surprise and said. This one. Luffy smiled and shook his arm. It's just an application of armament Haki. I haven't used it before, but it seems that I was lucky and succeeded. After speaking, Luffy laughed and patted the shoulder of the slave man in front of him and said, it seems that your luck is good, uncle, ha ha ha. Collar removed. At this moment, the slave man froze in place, his eyes filled with the days of his life after the catastrophe and his sudden freedom. After a while, he covered his face and cried bitterly. It's great to be alive, it's great to be free, I can finally go home. Kami watched this scene and grabbed Xiao Ba's clothes with some force. She was still a little scared at the moment. Looking at the weeping slave man in front of her, she seemed to see herself after becoming a slave. Armament Haki. Has the Straw Hat already mastered armament Haki? Luo stayed in New World for a while and knew a lot about Conqueror's Haki. Armament Haki. Although many people in New World have mastered it, but in the first half of the Grand Line, there are hardly many people who have mastered it, let alone a novice pirate who has not been out for a long time. Moreover, according to the users of armament Haki that he has seen, they can't do that just now. But after thinking about it for a while, Luo didn't bother with this issue anymore. Haki is the standard equipment for the strong, but it does not mean that Haki is stronger than ability. Ability and Haki are still based on the strength of the user. Then this. What should be considered now is running away. Playing celestial dragons is naturally very comfortable. 99% of the people in Sabaody want to kill celestial dragons. However, it is rare to follow up. The entry of Marine Admiral. It's not safe here anymore, the head of the Straw Hat, you'd better leave this island quickly. Before leaving, Luo reminded Luffy, if we can meet again in New World, I would like to cooperate with you. Luo has always had a revenge plan in his heart. It's just not now. The strength of the Straw Hat pirates is sufficient, and the novice pirates also meet his planned allies. It's just too early to talk about it now. Sabaody is too close to naval headquarters, and the marine station there probably has notified naval headquarters of what happened here, and Admiral is coming soon. Let's talk about New World now, let's wait until we escape from Admiral. Luo left with the members of the Heart Pirates. As for Luffy, he just tilted his head, looked at Luo's back with some doubts and said, who is this guy? Trafalgar Law, one of the supernovas, has a bounty of 200 million berry, which is also relatively strong among the supernovas. Nami explained from the side. Sanji looked at Luffy calmly and said, what are you going to do now? Captain, Admiral is coming soon. Although he is very confident in his current strength. But to be honest, the shadow brought by Aokiji was too great. Sanji still has a little guilty conscience when facing Admiral, it is best not to fight head-on. Luffy smiled, and originally wanted to say head-to-head with Admiral. However, the fear of Kami and Xiao Ba was too obvious in his emotional perception. Think about it. Luffy dropped that bold idea. Let's go find Uncle Rayleigh for coding first. As for Admiral, it's such a big island, just hide for 2 days. Luffy showed White Fang, and pressed the straw hat. Also, being chased by Admiral is so interesting, haha. It's not funny at all, is it? Nami directly punched Luffy's head and shook it, but it was rubber after all, so it didn't hurt or itch. However, can Rayleigh be found now? No, Xiao Ba said anxiously. With such a large island, there is no way to find it. It is too difficult to find a person. Don't worry about that. Luffy smiled excitedly, exchanged glances with Sanji Zoro and said. You've all felt it too, Zoro, Sanji. Ah, it's hard not to feel it, that terrifying aura hidden on this island. Zoro put one hand on the word, Hidao, on his waist, took a sip of wine, looked in a certain direction of the island, and said with a grin. Although it's only for a moment, the huge aura is like a monster. Rayleigh should have thought of it a long time ago. It should be the legendary existence. Sanji exhaled lightly, with a calm expression. I didn't expect such a big person to live in seclusion on this island. What charades are you playing? Frankie raised his sunglasses, a little inexplicably. I seem to know who it is too. It's just different from what is recorded in the book. Robin said thoughtfully. You will know when you see it. We are not sure if it is right now, but we should go and have a look. Chapter 18 Marine Shakes, Kizaru moves. Advertise here. After a while, number 1 mangrove area, population auction. In a slave prison, Rayleigh stood up straight from the dark cell. I didn't expect to be found so soon. It's interesting. Did you come after me? Really? They're all retired, or have they been found? Uncle, what's the matter? Asked the giant cellmate next to Rayleigh. This giant family has a certain strength and has also noticed Rayleigh's extraordinariness, so it is natural to ask immediately at this moment. No, I just decided to go out. Rayleigh smiled softly. However, as soon as he stood up, a powerful aura swept over him, and there was no sound from the population auction outside. Rayleigh couldn't help concentrating on this powerful spirit. It's been a long time since I've seen such a strong spirit. Boom. The heavy iron gate was violently blown away by a punch. The sunlight poured into the dark prison, which gave the prison some popularity. I can't hide. Rayleigh shook his fist slightly, and his huge momentum had begun to gather. However, when he looked at the person coming, he couldn't help being stunned for a moment. Straw Hat Kid. In this sea, even if he would admit to being wrong about anything else, he would not be able to admit being wrong about that straw hat. That slightly worn straw hat was the one Luo Jia once wore. Mr. Rayleigh, I was in East Blue, and I heard a child say the same thing that Captain Luo Jia said. So, I bet my arm and that hat on New World. In Rayleigh's mind, the words that Shanks had told him 12 years ago flashed into Rayleigh's mind. It's finally here. Rayleigh looked at the man grinning widely in the sun, at the straw hat on his head. It was like seeing the same figure again. At this moment, he clearly felt the progress of the times. For his remnant party who has been retired for decades and is still immersed in the old era, he clearly sees the arrival of a new era. The gears of the new era have begun to turn. Rayleigh, you're really here. Xiao Ba's surprised voice sounded. Ah, long time no see, Xiao Ba. Rayleigh lifted his glasses gently, wiping away the crystals from the corners of his eyes. The older a person is, the easier it is to be sentimental. This is my friend, the Straw Hat Boys. They are going to New World. I want to ask you to help me with the coding, New. Xiao Ba didn't see Rayleigh's mood swings, he walked out from behind Luffy and said to Rayleigh. Coding, leave it to me, since it's Xiaoba's friend. Rayleigh smiled brightly. But there are no tools now, go back to Shaki and get the tools. Everyone can do nothing. Although Admiral is about to attack, at this moment, the Captain Luffy is not even the slightest nervous, and naturally calmed down Nami's nervousness. Uncle, you are very strong. Luffy laughed as Rayleigh walked past Luffy. It's just an old man who has been eliminated by the times. It can't compare with the courage of your young people. Rayleigh smiled softly, unlike the calmness on Luffy's side. The Marshal's room at Naval Headquarters is already buzzing. What? The Celestial Dragons were attacked on Sabaody. Who is the murderer? It's Straw Hat again. Sengoku's voice raised more than one note, and he slammed the phone bug onto the table. Looking at Garp with eyes that seemed to be eating people. It's your good grandson again, Garp, and he caused another incident. What's going on with your family? Do you want to cause a big incident? Sengoku growled. If it weren't for the position of the desk and Garp, there is still a certain distance. The saliva star was designated to spray Garp in the face. Ahaha, as expected of my grandson. Garp laughed so hard that tears came out a little. You're actually proud. That's celestial dragons. Hitting them is equivalent to slapping the government in the face. It's just celestial dragons, those scumbags, I've wanted to beat them up for a long time. Garp waved his hands indifferently. Sengoku covered his forehead with a headache and said, that's what I said, I was the one who was in contact with the higher-ups. You don't know how difficult those old men are. You have to explain this matter to the higher-ups. Arrange for Admiral to dispatch. When Garp heard this, his eyes moved, his lips curled up, a little disdainful, but he didn't say anything else. Mr. Sengoku, let me dispatch. The celestial dragons were attacked under Marine's nose. If Marine doesn't express it, the higher-ups can't explain it. Sitting across from Garp, Kizaru, who was drinking tea, lowered his head slightly, but spoke anyway. Although he often fishes, he obviously can't fish now. The current naval headquarters, Akainu and Aokiji are absent. He is the only one among the three admirals. Marshal Sengoku cannot be touched, and Hero Garp is only vice admiral. Strictly speaking, there is nothing to do with celestial dragons. Moreover, Garp is still the grandfather of the Straw Hat Boy, so he doesn't release water once or twice. So now he is the only one who can move, although he really doesn't want to go. Then I will trouble you, Pelusalino, I will let the pacifists assist you, and block Sabaody. Sengoku glanced at Garp, and then said seriously, we must wipe out the Straw Hats. I see. Kizaru stood up unsteadily and walked towards the door. Aren't you worried, Garp? After Kizaru left, in the marshal's office, Sengoku glanced at Garp and said. Which aspect are you referring to? Sengoku. Admiral is dispatched. This time is not the same as before. With the strength of the Straw Hat Boy, he will definitely be wiped out this time. I told you a long time ago, restrain your grandson well, and you won't be in the situation you are today. There seems to be something else in Sengoku's words. Maybe he wasn't just talking about the Straw Hat Kid on Sabaody's ground, but also the Firefist Ace in Imperley. Luffy is an adult. Every man should be aware of his own decision. This is his path. He should have been aware of it since he set foot on this path. And, I have faith in Luffy. Garp was silent for a while, then suddenly laughed. Sengoku shook his head and said nothing more. Admiral personally took action to capture a rookie pirate who had been in the Grand Line for less than a year, and it was impossible for any problems to arise. Admiral's strength, and these newcomers, are two dimensions. Kizaru is not Garp, nor the bear from last time, he can't release water. The ending of Straw Hat Crew is already doomed. Chapter 19 The Legend of the Past. Advertise here. Sabaody Archipelago. Number 66 Mangrove Area. This is where Marine is stationed. Although due to the preparations for the war, the marine power in this base has been drawn a lot. But at this moment, when the secret troops are dispatched, the power that this marine base can display has surpassed the past. Hurry up, block Sabaody and arrest all the pirates on the island. A marine officer shouted loudly in the passageway of the base, and marine soldiers ran past him in an orderly manner. PX-1, PX-2, PX-3, PX-4, dispatch, your mission is to eliminate all pirates on the island. Zon Taowen, who was carrying a huge axe, shouted loudly. In front of him, the four pacifists had red eyes flashing. Command received. After speaking, the four pacifists left the marine base with heavy steps. Zon Taowen followed closely behind, with no expression on his face. This time, it's also a good opportunity to experiment with pacifist performance. This humanoid weapon made by Vegapunk based on the Shichibukai bear is theoretically stronger than a supernova. But it's just a theory, and exact combat experiments are still needed. Shaki's ripped off bar. Hey, the deputy of the One Piece. There was an exclamation of disbelief in the entire bar. Only Zoro, Sanji, and Robin were calm, as if they had already guessed. Liar. The legendary Pluton Rayleigh, such a famous person, is widely circulated in various sea areas. I have heard stories about Pluton Rayleigh since I was a child. Nami couldn't believe it. Really? Usopp nodded in agreement. Other big pirates may still only circulate within a certain range. But the reputation of the One Piece group like Luogia has already spread throughout the world. Uncle, You are so powerful, you are actually the deputy captain of One Piece. Luffy couldn't help but marvel. You didn't know it all the time, I thought you had already sensed it. Sanji couldn't help being a little speechless. They have already turned on their knowledge, and after perceiving the terrifying monster-like aura, coupled with the name Rayleigh, it is not difficult to guess Rayleigh's real identity. But thinking of Luffy's own god-tier experience, this is also understandable. Ha ha ha, deputy of One Piece, that was decades ago, now it's just an ordinary coder, Uncle Rayleigh. Rayleigh took a sip of his wine calmly and said with a smile. However, according to the rumors, the pirate group of One Piece King Luogia was arrested along with Luogia, and the entire group was arrested. Why is One Piece King's deputy on this island? Asked Nami. This is also the perception of the entire world and most people. The Luogia pirates were captured together with the One Piece King Luogia and buried together in that old era. Rayleigh was silent for a while, and then said lightly, that's fake news released by Marine to promote prestige, Luogia, he surrendered himself. Surrender yourself. It was another breaking news that shook the mood of everyone present. Luogia actually suffered from a terminal illness a long time ago. After the final trip, the Luogia pirates disbanded. When I saw Luogia again, it was already a year after our disbandment. He surrendered to Marine. With a calm tone, Rayleigh suppressed his inner emotions, and slowly narrated what happened between the two legends. This is also from the perspective of a real legendary pirate. From the perspective of Pluton Rayleigh, the deputy of the legendary Luogia pirates, go to the Straw Hat Pirates and tell what really happened in the first place. It is not what the world perceives, but it is full of great will and a real change of the times. Luogia him, used the last flame of his life to ignite the flames of the whole world. I never thought that I would laugh so happily that night, and I never felt so sad like that night. Our captain, his life, is really wonderful. Rayleigh wasn't talking, his glasses seemed to be fogged up, making it impossible to see his real expression. There was silence in the bar, no one made a sound, just looked at Rayleigh blankly. The sun shines on him through the door. It seems that people can follow this light, go back to that legendary era together, and see the farewell between the two legendary pirates. Rayleigh seems to carry a great era on his back. It feels like I've heard a very remarkable story. After a while, Nami spoke slowly. Rayleigh's words give people a sense of grandeur and shock, but also an indescribable sense of unreality. This sense of unreality depends on the matter itself. It is too legendary, so legendary, it seems to make people feel very far away from themselves. In fact, Luogia died only 20 years ago. Is this the One Piece? Luffy whispered, pressing lightly the hat on his head. Yes, that hat. Rayleigh smiled and pointed to the hat on Luffy's head. This one. Shanks gave it to me. I know, I really miss it. Luogia gave this hat to Shanks, and Shanks gave this straw hat to you. Rayleigh laughed. Hey, Luffy's straw hat is the straw hat of One Piece. Chopper couldn't help opening his mouth. Originally thought that the straw hats of 4 emperors Shanks were already very important, but it turned out that this straw hat was actually handed down from the One Piece King Luogia, which made the meaning even more extraordinary. Uncle, do you know Shanks too? Luffy was a little surprised. Why, didn't he tell you? Rayleigh asked with some doubts. Shanks, he used to be an apprentice on our ship. The trainee crew on the One Piece ship has now become the 4 emperors, and it feels like a very powerful relationship. Frankie was a little surprised. By the way, you guys are from East Blue, right? And Buggy, he's also an apprentice crew member. He used to have a good relationship with Shanks. Haha, they were often together when they were on the ship. Rayleigh laughed and said, decades have passed in a blink of an eye. I don't know what happened to Buggy. I still miss him a lot. Buggy. Zoro and Nami's expression collapsed immediately. That clown actually stayed on the ship of One Piece. I feel that the two styles don't match at all. Chapter 20 The Great Escape begins. Advertise here. Ha ha ha, it seems that you have already been in contact with him, and you have suffered a lot. Rayleigh looked at their faces and laughed loudly. He is that kind of person who always does something unexpected. You should still deal with him in the future. Probably not, Nami subconsciously said. She was going to say that Buggy was just a little East Blue pirate. Just thinking about it again, what Rayleigh said just now, Buggy used to stay on the ship of One Piece. I always feel that this person will appear in an unexpected place. Nami couldn't help but sigh. In a sense, Buggy is indeed a difficult person. By the way, Uncle Rayleigh, One Piece. Usopp suddenly thought of something and asked. Zoro Sanji's face darkened, but he didn't stop him. There was only one person present who could stop Usopp from asking the question. Stop asking, Usopp. Luffy's calm but full Haki voice interrupted Usopp directly. But, Luffy. Usopp wanted to say something, but when he saw Luffy's determined eyes, he suddenly couldn't say anything. I don't need to know the result of the voyage, the unknown in the voyage, the freedom I pursue, the dream, I will find the answer by myself. Luffy looked serious, and his voice was calm and not high-pitched. But it made everyone present clearly feel his unique will to pursue freedom. I see, don't tell me, Uncle Rayleigh, I've actually just had a strange disease that kills me when I hear the cryptic news. Usopp hastily made jokes to expose the matter. As a veteran of the Straw Hat crew early on, Usopp actually knew Luffy's will all along. It's just that in front of Pluton Rayleigh today, facing the information of the great secret treasure that was only one step away, he was shocked a little bit and lost his mind, but he recovered immediately. The ultimate dream of their group is not just OPEPIECE. They gathered together because of Luffy, and everyone has their own dreams in this voyage. Along the way, it is no longer a simple big secret treasure that can be summarized and pursued. That's really something only Luffy can say. Sanji couldn't help showing the expected smile. Although their captain is usually careless and out of tune, he always makes people feel extremely reliable at critical moments. Around Sanji, Zoro, Nami and the others also had expected expressions. However, Robin still had a tangled expression on his face. Finally, she stood up. Mr. Rayleigh, you know the 100 years of history hidden in this world, right? Robin asked, and she, who had always been too calm on weekdays, now clearly showed an expression of anticipation and nervousness, and even her body was trembling slightly. Robin. Nami was the closest, looking at her worriedly. The hidden century-old history has something to do with the final island. But unlike Usopp, no one on the Straw Hat crew is qualified to interrupt Robin's questions. Because what she was carrying was far heavier than everyone present. The will of thousands of scholars in Ohara is carried by Robin. What a heavy bond. There was silence in Shaki's bar. Rayleigh stood up and lowered his head slightly. His glasses were covered with a layer of light under the refraction of the sun, making it difficult to see his expression clearly. A moment later, Rayleigh sounded like a sigh. Ah, we know, all the historical texts, all the history of this world, we are clear. We rubbed all the historical texts and sent them to the final island. It's just, little girl of Ohara, it's still too early, even if you know, you are powerless to change, just like us back then. So, you might as well use your own strength to go to the final island, and use your own eyes to see the history of the disappearing century and the truth of this world. By that time, maybe the conclusion you draw is not the same as ours, and it may not be. After silence, Robin let out a heavy breath. I see. Although he didn't get the answer he really wanted, it was enough. The heavy atmosphere is eliminated. Rayleigh also pushed open the door of the bar and said, I have almost prepared the tools for coating. I will sail your boat to a hidden place. The coating will take about 3 days. During these 3 days, you should stay here. Let's play on the island. After entering the new world, you may not have such a leisurely time. Playing on the island, I'm afraid there is no chance. Nami was in a good mood, but when she heard Rayleigh say this, she sighed instantly. Oh, did something happen? Speaking of which, just after returning from the auction, there was something wrong with Marine's movements. Do you know what happened? Do not know. Luffy folded his arms, tilted his head and replied, it seems that it happened after I shot a celestial dragon's flying. Don't seem like it, the culprit is you. Nami directly slapped Luffy on the head in a daze. Luffy's words made Rayleigh, who has rich experience, couldn't help being stunned for a moment. It was Miss Shaki's laughter that broke the silence. Ha ha ha, little monkey, I kind of adore you. You are really a bit like me and S, always going to a place, and there will be big incidents. Rayleigh couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. But you guys won't have a good time these 3 days, find a place to hide immediately, Admiral is not a character that can be dismissed so easily. That's right, haha, Luffy still had a heartless smile on his face. Zoro Sanji also had a calm face. But Nami, Usopp, and Chopper, holding their heads, seemed a little nervous. Kami, Xiao Ba, you two don't want to go. Shaki said from the side. The strength of the two of you. Knew. Xiao Ba was a little disappointed, but he didn't say anything. His strength is a drag even if he goes there, and this island is too unfriendly to murlocs and mermaids. Don't worry, Xiao Ba, after 3 days, I'm still waiting for you to take us to the Fishman Island. Luffy comforted Xiao Badao, then pushed open the door of the bar, and said with a big smile, the great escape has begun, everyone, it's really interesting. Leaving as if playing around, Luffy didn't feel nervous at all. Instead, Shaki and Rayleigh looked at the backs of their group with serious eyes. Do you think Little Monkey and the others can escape Admiral's pursuit? Shaki asked, fingering a lady's cigarette. It's hard. The smile on Rayleigh's face was restrained. Admiral is a monster, and it's not so easy to deal with. Although Luffy has awakened conquerors, the gap is still too big. This kind of opponent is still too early for him. However, I will make a move at a critical moment, don't worry. Yours dependable as ever, Rayleigh. Shaki couldn't help chuckling at Rayleigh's words. Chapter 21 The Arrival of Kizaru, The Strength of the Pacifists. Advertise here. Rayleigh looked at Luffy and the others with an inexplicable meaning in his eyes. Perhaps, after experiencing a little setbacks and tribulations, they will grow better. The upcoming Admiral is a good wake-up call. When we arrive in the new world, it is impossible to maintain the relaxed awareness and vigilance we have now. As for Luffy, they can beat Admiral. Rayleigh didn't think about it at all. Facing Shichibukai, who is dissipated like crocodile, it may be possible to defeat with a burst of will. But Admiral, that's another level. A whole different level. It's just that my old bones are suffering, and I'm about to make another shot. I don't know if it's been a long time, or whether it's Marine Admiral's opponent. Rayleigh smiled and touched a long knife hung on his waist at some point. At the same time, Mangrove Area port at number 20 Sabaody. It's a warship. As Marine moving so fast. What happened? Why are there so many warships? This is a lawless zone, and there are a large number of pirates staying. Seeing the warship docking at the moment, I can't help but start to panic. What made them panic even more was the man standing on the shells who came to Sabaody as the warship fired. It's Admiral Kizaru. The shell exploded on the ground of Sabaody, and the light condensed. A pirate collapsed to the ground, crawling backwards with hands and feet together, shouting in horror. Moshi Moshi. However, Kizaru ignored the fleeing pirate at all, just scratched his head in doubt, and spoke to a small phone bug in his hand, but got no response. Surrounding him was a circle of pirates, but he just stood in the middle of the pirates like no one else. It looked like pirates had wrapped him up. In fact, it was this group of pirates who, under Kizaru's formidable aura, stiffened all over and dared not move. It's strange, why the phone bug didn't respond. Kizaru tilted his head, speaking in a slow and frivolous tone, giving people the feeling of a very wretched uncle. Forget it. By the way, do you know where the Straw Hat Boy is now? Please tell me, otherwise, I can only arrest you. Kizaru smiled and looked at the pirate in front of him. Go to hell, Admiral. Finally, under the strong pressure, a pirate couldn't bear it, raised his pistol, and shot directly between Kizaru's eyebrows. His marksmanship is very accurate, and the bullet hits right between the eyebrows. However, nothing worked, no blood and brain flow out, only a spot of light appeared on Kizaru's forehead, and then healed quickly. If you don't know, then there's nothing you can do. Kizaru still had that easy smile on his face, and he kicked it out. The bright light directly knocked down all the pirates present, and then the light remained undiminished, directly hitting a thick red tree. The thick and huge red tree was easily broken by this kick. Monster! Monster! The pirate, who was lucky enough not to be attacked, collapsed on the ground. Looking at the bursting bright light waves and the fallen tree, he was so frightened that he could hardly speak. It seems that I can only find it by myself. It's really nerve-wracking. Kizaru didn't even look at the pirates lying limp on the ground, and walked leisurely towards the interior of Sabaody, dangling Admiral's cloak. Facing this lawless zone, calm and relaxed, as if you just came out to relax. Area 24 of Sabaody. The famous food street and famous restaurants are concentrated here. It's just that at this moment, on the streets of the food street, it has been destroyed and tattered. Hereby, a bright light shot through. A bright light wave shock wave erupted directly in a restaurant, and the entire restaurant instantly turned into ruins. Step stone. Apu flipped back and fell into the ruins, looking solemnly at the huge figure in front of him. Then what kind of monster is it? Isn't it a Shichibukai bear? Why are there two, and they also emit lasers? Standing in front of Apu were two bear-like beings. Occasionally, a red light would flow through their eyes, and their hands and mouths could emit laser light. Karma. While Apu attracted the attention of a pacifist, Yoroja's body became extremely huge from behind, and he punched the pacifist. But it was useless, he felt that what his fist hit was a texture harder than steel. It's useless. I won't answer your question. After all, I'm the strictest man in the world. Zon Taowen, who was carrying a huge axe, looked at Apu and said, this is developed by Vegapunk. It is a humanoid weapon, a pacifist, and the cost of a warship is comparable to that of a warship. Its strength, dealing with you newcomers, couldn't be easier. It's also called being strict in tone. I've said it all. Apu couldn't help but complain. But thanks to Zon Taomaru, they have a better understanding of these guys in front of them. Humanoid weapon. Apu looked around. This food street gathers the vast majority of supernovas. Capone Beige, Yoroj, Drake, Trafalgar Law, Kid and Kira who just woke up, and Hawkins who didn't pay attention to the pacifists at all and just did divination. Let's join hands and get rid of these two iron guys first. Apu spoke, and the other supernovas also nodded. The speed of the pacifists is extremely fast, and their tracking ability is also very strong. Rather than saying that they gathered here, it is better to say that they happened to gather here when they were being chased. Based on your strength, you also want to solve the pacifists, don't be kidding. Zon Taowen roared. PX3, PX4, defeat them for me. After a while, electric current came out of the mouths of the two pacifists, and a scorched aura emanated from their heads, completely paralyzed in place. And the supernova is also a miserable sound. Yoroj was lying on the ground, his body back to normal size, with two blood holes in his shoulder. On the other side, Drake exited the Allosaurus form, and the chest has been shot through. Luo supported his body with the knife, panting heavily. Only Apu is in better shape, as he mostly attacks from range. The key is that Kid and Kira's condition is too bad, otherwise they could join forces to deal with the two pacifists, and it would be a little easier. I've underestimated you, you can actually solve PX3 and PX4. Zon Taowen looked down at the supernova below, and said. As this Marine's secret weapon. That's all, if I'm in my prime. Kid still wanted to speak hard, but he couldn't speak anymore. Because behind Zon Taowen, two huge figures appeared again. Chapter 22 Second and Third Commanders. Advertise here. Just kidding, are there so many of these things? Kid's face became extremely ugly. This kind of pacifist can only know how difficult it is to fight against. Because it was specially prepared to catch pirates. This pacifist has strong speed and power, and the ability to capture motion is also very pervert. The most important thing is his defense and attack power. The defense power relies on his body of unknown material, not only has extremely high resistance to the abilities of capable users, but also is extremely hard, able to easily block their attacks. And the attack power is the powerful laser ability. That laser can easily penetrate the supernova level defense, and the firing speed is extremely fast and extremely destructive. With so many supernovas present, all of them teamed up, and they could barely get rid of the two pacifists, and they were already seriously injured. As a result, there are now two more. And their current state is much worse than before. Although I heard about it when first was in Marine, I didn't expect that the strength of the pacifists would be so terrifying, that lunatic Vegapunk. Chi-Chi Drake, clutching the huge penetrating wound on his chest, cursed secretly with a solemn expression. If it wasn't for the straw hats. Now he should go to New World as a supernova, undercover for emperors. Everything should have been fine. But now, he can't even imagine how he can escape from this kind of encirclement. Zon Taowen can release water, but other supernovas have been caught, so his identity as a pirate seems particularly wrong. Hereby, photons condensed on the palms of the two pacifists, pointing directly at the supernova below. Damn it, is it over? Luo clenched the long knife in his hand, his face was ugly. However, the moment the laser was about to be fired, the pacifist turned around and fired the laser into the distance. PX1, PX2, what are you doing? Why don't you defeat the pirates below? Zon Taowen scolded loudly. Obviously the supernovas below have been seriously injured, as long as two more laser shots are fired, they will be completely over. But now it misses. And it's so over the top. Could it be that there is a problem with Vegapunk's capture command? Many thoughts flashed through Zon Taowen's mind. The pacifists can't make too many problems. This will also be a big force in the next war. If there is a problem with the internal capture command, it will definitely not be able to be placed on the battlefield. Catch the Straw Hat Boys, and take the Straw Hat Boys as the first capture priority. The red light in PX1's eyes flickered, and he was facing the distance. Zon Taowen looked in that direction, with a strong perception, he saw the Straw Hat Boys running here. The laser just now clearly drew their attention to this side. Leading Straw Hats, Roronoa Zoro, and Blackfoot Sanji, are coming at breakneck speed. PX1, PX2, defeat them for me. Zon Taomaru pointed his giant axe, and two huge pacifists behind him bent down. Like two giant cannons, bright light waves condensed from the mouth. ZZZ. After a short period of condensation, several bright light waves hit Luffy Zoro and the others who were rushing over. Each light wave contains terrifying energy and penetrating power, comparable to a powerful bomb. What have you been doing since just now? It's really annoying. On the way Luffy was running fast, red light flashed in his eyes, he just turned sideways slightly, several light waves passed by, and a strong shock wave exploded behind him. Beside him, Zoro Sanji also dodged easily and freely, as if he had predicted the trajectory of the light wave in advance. Shichibukai bear. But something doesn't feel right. Zoro held Chushui's scabbard with one hand, and the handle with the other. With a light push of his thumb, the black blade shone coldly. Hey, green algae head, look clearly, it should not be a Shichibukai bear, there are two, and the breath on the body does not want to be a living person. Sanji looked at the pacifist in the distance. What the hell is this? Whatever he is, since he has already attacked, let's cut it first. Zoro grinned. The pacifists in the distance, after firing lasers to no avail, immediately from the high ruins, rushed over at an extremely fast speed, as if flying close to the ground. During this process, bright light waves were still condensing in his palms and mouth. Straw Hat Kid. Kid half knelt on the ground, watching the impending collision in the distance. The Straw Hats. Luo also looked solemn. If Luffy can't solve these two pacifists, they won't even think about leaving the island. Interesting. Watch the pacifists swooping down. Luffy didn't bother at all. Zoro and Sanji beside them smiled lightly and accelerated sharply. A black light suddenly appeared in one hand, and a black aura was faintly condensed on the other foot. One shot. Zoro whispered. Banquet set meal. Sanji has jumped into the air. Black flash. Death. Lion song. First grade rough. The pitch black sword light flickered across the pacifist's body like a ray of black in an instant, and Zoro appeared behind the huge figure of the pacifist at some point. The autumn water in his hand seemed to have not been sheathed at all. Sanji jumped down from midair lightly and gracefully, and landed beside Zoro. With his palms outstretched, he slightly protected the flame of the lighter, and lit the cigarette in his mouth. It's a little brittle, and it's not very comfortable to chop. Zoro inserted Chushui back into his waist. In terms of pure ingredients, it's a little hard, but it's handled just right. Sanji let out a puff of smoke lightly. And now, the pacifists behind them shook their heads as if they had just been attacked, and erupted with electric currents. Boom. Accompanied by a huge explosion. The two pacifists were completely scrapped. So handsome, Zoro, Sanji. Chopper shouted from a distance. The two of them are so handsome. Usopp was also excited. I have to say that compared to the first time they faced a bear, the actions of Zoro and Sanji at this moment are simply extremely handsome, and the two bears were dealt with easily and freely. Straw Hat Crew. The supernovas present did not know what expression to use. Killed Kid Kira in a flash before, and now they are facing the two pacifists they have worked so hard to solve. The Straw Hat didn't even make a move. It is really hopeless that two pacifists can be easily killed in seconds with only the random shots of the second in command and the third in command. Is this really the gap between supernovae? It must be too big.